All right, I've got 2 minutes after 6, running a couple minutes behind. My apologies. Go ahead and call to order our regular session of February 27, 2018. First order of business we have after the calling to order is opening prayer and pledges of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas, and Councilmember Gutierrez will lead us this evening. If you please join me in standing.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to go closer as a group and nurture the bonds of this community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that will affect the residents, staff, and businesses. Continue to remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the greater glory of you and the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. All right, first thing we have this evening, we have a presentation regarding the Historical Preservation Committee and its annual report. Mr. Schertz, good evening and thanks for joining us.
Good evening, members of council, mayor. I'm here tonight as annually I appear to present both a written report and a verbal report on the activities of the Schertz Historical Preservation Committee, which is your committee. I've delivered a written copy of this report to each of you, and you can look at that at your leisure and find what's interest to you if there is there. The simplest and quickest way to report on what has occurred as relates to our committee's mission is to review the statement of executive summary found in your reports. The summary contains the following information. The Schertz Historical Preservation Committee for this past calendar year 2017's objectives included the following general topics. First would be historic recognition projects. Second would be advancing what we call the historic narrative through publications and or public appearances. And thirdly, through joint organizational initiatives that we might participate in. The committee's Landmark Property Heritage Neighborhood Designation Program produced nominations for 3 separate properties that were eventually selected by your council for designation as landmark properties. The selected properties were 603 Main Street, 7720 Tana Road, and 207 First Street. Several of the banners which recognized the 2 neighborhoods were destroyed by the winds associated with Hurricane Harvey. Replacement banners have been produced and are being mounted during this week. 3 Main Street matching grant program proposals were sent to council for approval, and all were approved during the year. Publication projects have included 4 quarterly newsletters, 6 Remembrance Special Edition articles, a revised set of committee bylaws, and a 4th book titled Schertz City Council, Half Century of Service. The committee's 2017 Looking Back feature appeared in each monthly edition of Schertz magazine. 12 new inputs for the 2018 Looking Back feature have been submitted to the magazine. Sales of our committee books have continued throughout the year. A joint committee, Schertz Cibolo Independent School District student essay art contest was successfully completed during the 2016-2017 school year. An appropriate student winner recognition ceremony was held on December 5th, 2017, here in the chamber. Community outreach included committee representations at the Schertz City Community Neighborhood Helping Neighbors Cleanup Initiative, and the committee participated in open house activities for the city's volunteer open house and the Clemens High School 50th anniversary celebrations. Multiple public appearances opportunities were pursued to include presentations of 2 Community Genealogy Society meetings, both for Schertz and New Braunfels, and school district open house events, and participation in the Northeast College Lower Valley School Project Committee. The committee has been honored by recognition by the Randolph Metropolitan Rotary Club Volunteer of the Quarter Award, as well as committee member Dr. Paul Riesenbach being honored as we speak tonight by the San Antonio Historical Association as a awardee of the Dr. Joseph Schmitz Award for excellence in diversification and dissemination of history on an international scale. Our sister historical society in Riedersheim, France, has allowed us to maintain that French connection over the year. The committee has accomplished its objectives as it set forth for 2017, and it looks forward to continuing that progress in 2018. The bottom line in concluding this briefing, and a final statement to be made regarding our committee's activity this past year, is that nothing could have happened had it not been for the support of staff members from nearly every city department, from the city's manager's office, and particular participation of Mr. James on our committee, and from the city secretary's office to procurement, to finance, to parks and recreation, to public affairs, to planning, to the library director, to GIS mapping, and others. And most importantly, to City Council, who continue to support and encourage our mission, as well as Council's continued involvement in the Main Street Revamp program. We've set forth committee objectives for 2018 that support the 3 principal features of our mission, to include advancing the city's historical narrative, designation of historic properties and neighborhoods, and involvement in joint community historic outreach projects. We look forward to continuing the effort to honor the city's storied history and its ever-evolving legacy of building a proud and prosperous community. Thank you all for your time and attention this evening, and I would gladly answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Wirtz, as always. And just again, as I point out from time to time as we give these briefings from you each year, we didn't have an historical preservation committee until mid-2000s. This wasn't something that was taken up starting in the late 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s. It's a new thing, and the amount of ground that you and the team have made up in such a short period of time has been exceptional work. And I just want to say thank you again.
Well, thank you. We're proud to be a part of the city's history.
Absolutely. Council, anyone else? Any thoughts, comments, questions? Mr. Wirtz, thank you as always. I appreciate the work. All right, next on the agenda, we have a presentation regarding the upcoming 10th Annual Willenchick Walk for Life. Howdy. How are you all this evening?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. We're doing all right here. Can you believe we've been walking for 10 years?
I did not realize that. 10 years.
This will be the 10th, yes. All right.
Wow.
So our update here, celebrating Schertz, and we're going to remember Tony Willenchick. This 10th annual event that we're going to have For our 2008, we're kicking off the year 2018 with our special large events with the Willincheck Walk for Life. There are 5 large events that we're going to host, as you have on your screen, along with several music and movie in the park events from our parks team, and then also some joint events that we do trunk or treat. That's a partnership with the Y, along with Moving on Main as well, too. So Willincheck Walk, we raise funds for cancer research. Our Moving on Main, this is new to our schedule. You're going to learn a little bit more about that one here in the next month or so, but something new for us and kind of an outdoor fun with a little bit of a health twist as well. Jubilee is our community favorite event. Lots of history with this one. Brings not only our residents, but our neighbors as well to come out and celebrate with us. Schertz Q, we've modified our Schertz Fest into our Schertz Q, concentrating on the barbecue cook-off, so we're going to be grilling in the burbs. And then in December, our tree lighting and our Festival of Angels that kicks off the holiday season for our residents. All right, Willincheck Walk will be Saturday, March 3rd, so just this coming Saturday. It was created in 2009 to help raise awareness and some funds for cancer research. It was named after Tony, who was a patient at then the CTRC, Cancer Therapy and Research Center. It is now the Mays Cancer Center, but we still continue to raise the funds and donate to this group. They use the funds locally. They stay right here, and they're put into research for families and patients that are in our South Texas area, the San Antonio area as well, too. To date, as of the first 9 years, it was more than $169,000 that we've been able to raise with the Willincheck Walk. So we have a sponsor for this event. HEB has been our title sponsor every year, and they are again this year for the 10th annual. Their donation helps to cover all of the expenses that we incur with the walk, so that every single penny of registrations and or donations, the signs of love, everything goes directly to the Cancer Therapy Center. We go off rain or shine. So we've had some fog, we've had some rain, we've had some pretty days as well too, so keep your fingers crossed. We're expecting a little bit of rain. Hopefully it holds off for us, and we're able to come back out and gather. We are anticipating about 20 or so teams that will be part of the event. They're the families that will get together and walk either in honor of someone who is still fighting that battle or in memory of someone who has lost that battle with cancer. We keep this in Tony's name. 2 ways to register. So online, it's at active.com. You can sign up there, pay for it with a credit card there, or you can do a paper registration and bring it into the office as well, too. The form is on visitschertz.com. I left a copy for you on the dais there. And if you any questions, just come on up to the Community Center, Building 3, and we'll be able to help you, either Natalie or I, with the registrations that you'll have. And we hope that you're going to come walk with us. And we're doing these events through your direction to be able to provide some local community events for our Schertz residents to enjoy. We want to ensure that they're family-friendly, so you're going to see a variety of elements at all of these events. Starting with the 5K, it is for any ages. You can be, as long as you're walking, you're going to be able to participate in the event. It's not a timed event at all, so if you're a little bit slower than others, it's not going to be a problem. You're able to continue and finish the walk as well, too. And in this one, so for all ages as well, too. And then we focus on the why and what's important, and these are the reasons of why we're hosting these events. All right. Any questions?
I do. What's the route this year?
We are going to begin at Samuel Clemens High School, as we normally have, but we're going to push the route backwards a little bit. So we will begin at the north end of the stadium in the small parking lot next to their, like the visitors' locker room where Seal normally goes when they're having their games. We will start in that parking lot there. The rest of the route will remain the same. We'll come out onto the parkway for just a slight bit, come here onto Community Circle, all the way around to the visitor center, out onto the parkway, up to Jonas Drive, and we will turn around and return our route exactly the same.
Okay.
We begin at 9 o'clock. We open up at 8 o'clock. You can, if you haven't registered, you can still register the day of the event. That will begin at 8 o'clock, and we'll kind of stretch everybody, warm everybody up, and then we will kick off at 9 o'clock.
Anyone else questions? Well, I can't help but comment since it's the 10th year. Tony Willincheck sat in place 4 and sat immediately to my right for the last years of his life. And just a couple of things that he brought to the City Council. The City Council already had a good grasp about municipal finance and what we could do and what we should do. And Tony brought from his private sector life at the USAA Bank Company some new words, at least to me at the time, and I think to the majority of the council, and one of them was arbitrage, as he tried to explain to us, and it took us a little while to figure it out. Cedric and I eventually figured it out. Well, Cedric had a head up. He was already in the industry, but to think about what it would be like if the money that we had in investment accounts and savings as a municipality was earning more in interest than we were paying in interest for something that we bought. We were basically in an arbitrage position, and the idea that we could even do that was pretty amazing. And Tony brought that to us, and a lot of other really great ideas that have benefited the city of Schertz. The other thing that I'll say about Tony is that he and I used to get in trouble with Mayor Baldwin and Councilmember Agee for cutting up during council meetings, and would occasionally have to be told, gentlemen, you guys think you could wait till after the meeting? Or Mrs. Agee saying, could you ask the boys to be a little more quiet? Tony was a lot of fun, and he was a good man, and so I hope you'll all come out and join us and honor him and help us raise money for the effort. So, thank you, ma'am, and I'll see you on Saturday.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Next item that we have on the agenda this evening is a 2018 State of the City Address. I think we have a video that we're going to show and talk a little bit about what went on a very recent Tuesday.
Yes. So
amongst the cities.
The State of the City video is a video that Public Affairs has been coordinating with management to develop and execute for the last 6 years. So this is going to be our 6th video. And these videos are, we use them a little differently each year depending on kind of what's going on in our city, what we're focusing on. But this year, one thing we wanted to highlight was the results of the Citizen Satisfaction Survey and how the city is using those results to develop budgets and make strategic decisions that address the needs that the residents have identified. And so that is what this video was featuring and highlighting this year. So here is the video.
In late 2016, the City of Schertz conducted its first Citizen Satisfaction Survey in order to provide residents the opportunity to give city leaders valuable feedback regarding city services. The results were positive, with more than 80% of surveyed residents indicating satisfaction with quality of services and quality of life provided by the city. Some of the areas residents identified as a high priority with regards to service delivery include maintenance of major city streets, parks and recreation programs, walking and biking trails, and code enforcement. With the information collected from the survey, City Council and staff are equipped to make sound, strategic decisions in a variety of areas, including service improvements and enhancements, policy development, and planning for growth. As a result, the 2017-18 budget was developed to include funding for maintenance of streets and sidewalks, strategic hiring of city staff, and road repairs and expansion.
Engineering and Public Works have been working together to come up with a pavement preservation program that includes everything from minor maintenance on our streets, such as crack sealing in a very focused and systematic manner, and rehabilitation and reconstruction of some other streets. So we can expend relatively minor amount of maintenance dollars now instead of having to do a very, very expensive reconstruction project in the future.
Parks are a tangible reflection of the quality of life in a community. Our Parks Department is committed to not only providing parks maintenance, but also in developing and expanding recreation programs for residents to have an opportunity for health and well-being accessible for all ages and abilities.
So based on the Citizen Satisfaction Survey results, the items that the citizens are most interested in seeing in terms of parks and recreation are more hiking and biking trails, increased level of service and maintenance in our parks, more adult recreation opportunities, as well as just more parks in general. So we've got a lot of new programs that we're excited about to share with the residents of Schertz. We've continued our Music and Movies in the Park series for 2018. We've got 8 different movies and concerts going on. We've also increased our nature education programming at Crescent Bend Nature Park. We've got Children's Nature Discovery Series, we have birding walks, and we have star parties going on throughout the year. We're also partnering with the YMCA for several events throughout the year to make them bigger and better. We've got Moving on Main coming up in April, and we're working on some aquatics programs for the summer.
Schertz understands the benefit of effective code compliance in maintaining quality of life for our residents and supporting a pro-business climate. Through education and face-to-face interaction with residents, we have made improvements in addressing code compliance issues. In doing so, we have increased voluntary compliance to keep Schertz looking like the community we are so proud of.
So after the last citizen survey, I think we got a better understanding of the citizens' needs in code enforcement and enforcing the city codes. We also were approved a position for a code enforcement officer by the City Council, and that'll increase by at least a third our enforcement capacity of the city ordinances in the City of Schertz.
Residents and city leaders continue to emphasize safety within the city, particularly in light of the rapid growth we face by adding additional public safety personnel.
Whether it's the citizen survey or council meetings or neighborhood HOA meetings, the concerns that we get from the citizens are fairly similar. They want more patrol in the neighborhoods, they want more traffic enforcement. And these concerns have not been lost on the city staff and the city council. In the last 2 budget years, we've been approved for 4 new patrol positions. And these patrol positions will be used to do exactly that, patrol the neighborhoods and work traffic enforcement. These 4 positions are going to be used to populate a new shift that will overlap the current shifts. It will start in the afternoon, work through the evening into the early morning hours, and their primary purpose is the patrolling of the neighborhoods, the additional traffic enforcement that they'll provide.
Our commitment to understanding the wants and needs of our residents helps shape the community we live in. City leadership continues to take a balanced approach to serve residents while keeping a focus on priorities and building a sustainable foundation for ongoing success.
Very good. Listen, again, another nice production. We've been doing this for several years now. There is a little bit of a one-upmanship that goes on. It's Cibolo and Selma also present at the same event on Tuesday. We're always trying to outdo one another. I think we outdo the other 2 every year. No slight to my friend Tommy or Mr. Boyle, but I just think we do a better job. Anyway, there it is. Council, comments, questions? If there are none, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And actually, you have the next one as well. So the next one is a presentation of employee newsletter, the Schertz Short.
Yes.
Which I like as well. It's a good one.
So,
there's a song out there, too, that was written by a resident called Selma Schertz, Not My Pants. Have you heard of that one?
I have not.
I'll make sure to get a copy.
Need to find
Copy of that song. It's out there.
Yes, so we are going to be introducing and going over the employee newsletter with you this evening, the Schertz Short, and I'm going to have Melissa Giedman, our communications manager, and Devin Flores, our marketing and communications specialist, walk through this with you, the process for kind of how we got here, and then kind of going over the product itself and how we're going to be using it going forward.
Good evening. So as you may have seen before, the Schertz Short just launched this month that we're very excited about. So we're just going to give you a little briefing about how it came to be and then kind of walk you through some of its sections. All right, so why an employee newsletter? In 2016, the city conducted an employee engagement survey. As a result, internal communications and employee engagement were identified as areas of opportunity for improvement. At the time, the primary means of communicating to our employees was through the employee intranet, which hosted city news and information on the homepage and was irregularly updated with information. Public Affairs then wanted to get employees' feedback on the intranet, so we conducted a survey on the usage, functionality, accessibility, and overall satisfaction with the intranet as a communication tool. The results indicated the need for more internal communications and employee engagement, timelier information, a larger scope of information, and a refreshed format. So as a result, the Schertz Short was evolved. It is a bi-weekly employee newsletter produced in-house by the Public Affairs team. Our overall goal is to increase communication and provide timely and informative news to all of our employees. Some of the areas that we'll walk you through include upcoming events, to include both internal events and external events, employee recognitions, to include service pinnings, promotions, achievements, retirements, and our new hires, changes in procedures and policies as they come available, training opportunities across the board, health and wellness tips provided by our human resources, the Schertz magazine, which will link them to all information that we produce monthly, and of course news from other departments as comes available. All
All right, so we'll walk you through. So this is the one that came out this past Monday. How do I go back to the? All right. So this is the interactive version. So the left column will have all of our upcoming events internally and externally. So the internal events will link to the flyers. So this is for our upcoming Lunch and Learn. And then the external events for Will and Chick will go to the calendar on Schertz.com. So real easy to find all the information about those events on there. And then it'll also include a message from Public Affairs. We might also get messages from other departments. And then we have our employee news and information section. So this will be the more pressing events and our news that we want to get out. Updates on policies. And those will be linked as well here. And we have employee recognitions, so service pins, those will be here. We had a lot this past month. And then also service, any other kind of like employee recognitions. Then we have training opportunities. Again, all of these are links, so it's really easy for them to find additional information on those and additional training opportunities. The HR department also provides us with information that's important for our employees to know. And then we have information on if employees want to have anything included in the next issue, they can send that. And we also include our mission and vision and our core values up here as well. So, yeah.
By improving our communications with our employees, our hopes are that we can increase awareness of information throughout the city, as well as bring a higher participation rate to all of our events, both internally and externally. The Schertz Short officially launched on February the 12th. Since its debut, we have received overwhelmingly great feedback and appreciation from our city staff. We certainly are still in our development phase of the newsletter, and we plan to grow it over time. We're excited for its launch, and we definitely look forward to sharing information with our peers going forward.
Very good. All right. Council, questions, commentary? Mr. Edwards?
I just have one comment. You know, community service opportunity, I love that. You know, but you guys are doing basically people serving and also giving the potential of what we can do inside our city staff. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Good job.
Very good. Anyone else? This is great to see direct response. You know, we did our very first engagement and satisfaction surveys with our staff just about 4 years ago, thereabouts, 3.5. We'd never done that before, and one of the things that was identified in both times that we did that was, you know, communication. We want to know more about what's going on within the organization. I'll tell you that in the private sector, we struggle with the same thing. It's difficult to make everyone aware of everything that's going on. But this is a fantastic step in addressing that directly and head on, and that it is internal facing and designed to be so. Very nice work.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it forward. Appreciate it. All right, the next item I have on the agenda this evening, we have announcements of upcoming city events. Who's got the duty this evening? Mrs. Gonzalez?
That would be me. Good evening, everybody. All right, so on here, I believe Brenda had sent you all an email on Thursday, March 1st. Senator Donna Campbell is going to be visiting the Schertz Family YMCA at 10 a.m. They are wanting to try to get a head count, so if you are planning on going, if you could let Brenda or Donna know, so that way we can let Freddie know at the YMCA, it would be appreciated. On Saturday, March 3rd, in addition to the Walk for Life that's going on, there's going to be a nature discovery series, Discover What's Flying. It's at 10 a.m. at Crescent Bend Nature Park. Pre-registration is required, and you can call 210-619-1850 to do so. On March 6th, Council approved to cancel the regularly scheduled meeting due to the election night, so there will not be a council meeting. On Friday, March 9th, the library is going to be closed to the public due to staff training and some computer maintenance that they need to take care of. On Saturday, March 10th through Sunday, March 25th, the spring cleanup begins, and the drop-off location is going to be 125 Pecan Drive from 8 to 5 each day. And the last thing on here, a little bit further away on March 22nd, is going to be the taste that the Chamber puts on. And with our city's membership, we get 10 tickets to that. And so we want to offer it up to Mayor and Council if you all would like any of the tickets. If you could let myself know by Friday. And any tickets that don't go claimed, then the Chamber is donating them to Randolph as a way of thanking our military for their service to our community. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Next item up is announcements and recognitions by the acting city manager, Mr. James.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I wanted to do is point out for folks in the audience some of the written updates we give council that we don't discuss, but just so you don't miss them in the back of the agenda. One is an update on the bandit sign pickup. You may recall a few weeks ago, if you regularly attend these meetings, there was discussion about bandit signs. The police department has taken that on and have picked up quite a few. So again, certainly go online, check the agenda, or chat with Chief Hansen in the back. The other is we make note of the council compensation adjustments that's come forward that's tied to the consumer price index, so just so y'all are aware of that. We have some information how we're going to approach the concern from a citizen with regard to traffic on Westchester at Elbell. We've provided an update on where we stand with a contract with an engineering firm to deal with the drainage concern up in northern Schertz in the Scenic Hills subdivision. And then lastly, a master calendar update. We're pushing back basically about a week the July budget retreats to allow time for the appraisal district to provide us the information on the revenues we will receive. It doesn't make a lot of sense to have that discussion before we know how much our funding will be, so we've pushed that back a week. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is announcements and recognitions by the mayor. I do have one thing I'd like to share, and I think that a lot of times we see these folks out in the community, whether it be on the parkway, whether it be in parks, et cetera. But there are folks that go out there and quietly do work, whether it's clearing some weeds on the parkway or putting some blocks back up that have been knocked over for whatever reason, or picking up trash in the park, just quietly going about doing things for their neighbors. And they're not, the ones that I've spoken to, they're not particularly interested in coming up here for a council meeting and being recognized. They just kind of want to quietly go about and do the things that they do for all the rest of us. So my only comment that I did get back from one was, it would be okay, though, if you stop by in the summer months when I'm doing this and give me a water or something if I happen to look like I've run out. So if you happen to see these folks as it starts to get warmer, might be a cool thing to do. Other than that, I just wanted to say thank you for anyone that may be watching the video later on, or that may be here this evening, that goes out and just quietly does work in the community just because. Thank you, and we do see you and do appreciate it. All right. Next item that I have on the agenda this evening is hearing of residents, and first to sign up is Scott Risto.
Thank you, Mayor, for having me up here. You said something about 5 minutes ago that caught my attention. Y'all can't all be aware of everything that's going on in the city. Obviously, if y'all look at the paperwork, I'm on the agenda. I'm a former employee that was working here, a police officer. And my goal here tonight is just to bring awareness and maybe get the council involved in actually talking to the officers of how they're being treated from the uppers and down. I still talk to about 50% of the PD because my character speaks well for itself. I still have a lot of friends here that work here, and all they do is complain, but they won't speak up. So I wanted to come here today and be a voice for people that won't fight for themselves. And you're right, you can't know of everything that's going on, but I think my role now is to expose everything that's going on in a legal way. There's a lot of stuff that is going on in the city that is not talked about, that's been brought to my attention. There's videos, there's reports, it's not just hearsay. And I feel maybe God put this in me to bring attention, bring light to y'all, what's going on in the city that y'all don't know about. And I think maybe y'all do know about, but don't want to address it. I'm not here to bash the city of Schertz. I'm not here to bash any of the officers. I'm certainly not here to bash Chief Hansen. I'm just here to be a voice and speak for those that will not speak up for themselves because they're scared of their job. I lost my job over some, I would say, witch hunt, if you want to call it that. That's what I call it. But I don't know what else to say except for if you have questions for me. If not, I mean, I think I tried having a meeting with Kessel about 2.5 years ago when I first got, metaphorically, I resigned, but it was, I was forced to resign by the assistant chief. So metaphorically, when I say that, it was like a metaphoric gun to my head. Resign or go to jail kind of deal. And I think if I tried having a meeting with Kessel 2.5 years ago, if he would have responded back, I think y'all would be in a lot less mess than y'all are. You have lawsuits coming up now, and y'all are going to have more that I know about. And that's not what I want for the city or the citizens, but the citizens need to know how the police department is treated and how the police officers are treated. And with that being said, that's really all I got, unless y'all have questions for me.
Sir, appreciate it.
Everything else, just, I would say, stay tuned, you know?
Very good. The Open Meetings Act being what it is, we don't get to have a dialogue back and forth. I said the Open Meetings Act being what it is here in Texas, we don't get to have a dialogue back and forth at this time.
Oh, okay. Never been to one, didn't know how it worked.
Not a problem at all.
Like I said, I wanted to, a lot of people complain to me still about the department, and I don't want that. I don't want, people being police officers where they don't like it, where there's animosity all the time, and they complain to me, and I'm like, well, why don't you be a voice? I don't work there anymore. Why don't you be a voice? So after long prayer and diligence praying, I think God kind of put that on me, saying, you know what, I saw my name on the board today. I don't know how. And I was like, well, I thought this was actually going to be a bashing Scott session, when I know my character is good. But that's not what it is, obviously. But I don't know what it is. I'm not going to stick around the whole time. But I just wanted to be a voice to, like I said, those people that will not stand up for themselves because they're afraid, if they do, of the repercussions because they see it and they saw it in me. I did the right thing. We're modeled off integrity. I fought. I presented something that was going on with the supervisor. I lost my job. So when police talk about integrity, I don't know if the police officers here are, if they have integrity, great, and if they do model integrity, they're punished for it. And that's every single oral board I've ever been into with the police department. They always ask you, do you have integrity? It's a cliche question, but the answer should be yes. And I had integrity here about a certain situation that I was going to bring to light, adultery, if you want to call it that, and it never got heard. I got pushed out of an office, and I was never allowed to talk about it. And within a week, I was asked to resign. So, or go to jail, which I later found out I was never going to be in jail. It was just a way to bully me out of a job. So now the past 2.5 years, I've been broke, lost my place, lost my vehicle. I've lost everything. People can find me on Facebook. They can find me under a different name. I don't use my real name, but if people want to know the truth, I think they're going to get it pretty soon. I think there's going to be some people coming forward now that have more officers coming forward to expose things that are going on, and some are pretty embarrassing. And some I don't think the mayor of the city would really like that their police officers are doing. This isn't hearsay. There's proof. So that's all I got. It's not dialogue. I don't know how this works, so I apologize if I look stupid up here. I just thought it was dialogue.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you, sir.
Is that it? Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, signed up next this evening is Karen Mitchell, and it does say, very good. Just wanted to make sure you didn't want to speak at both. That is allowed, so we'll in the public hearing, and we'll make sure that we recognize you then. Next on the list, Michelle Terleski.
Thanks, Mike. You got the name right. You're doing good.
In practice.
Michelle Terleski, 705 Maryland Drive. I want to talk again about the First Amendment. I've had 3 people talk to me about it in the peanut gallery, not from the stands. Once again, I'm talking about personal social media, not the city's computers, not the government's computers, the personal social media accounts. I would like for y'all to give me an example of how you think you're going to control and have consequences on citizens, commissioners, board members, councilmen, myself, on social media. And I would like it from y'all's dais up there so it's on record, on the minutes, instead of in the peanut gallery. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is Maggie Titterington. Maggie.
Good evening. See if I can make this work. Did it. There was reference to the state of the cities, and just Mayor, on behalf of the businesses, your presentation to introduce the video and the things that you said, and passing out your card really meant a lot to the businesses present. If I heard one time, I heard at least a dozen times the comments. They really appreciated your presence and the words you said. And that being said, what I wanted to do very, very quickly is we did our State of the Chamber as well. And let me see if I can make this work, 'cause I know I only have 3 minutes. We had some really awesome points of pride that I wanted to bring up that has to do not only with the City of Schertz, but the Chamber and the businesses. We have 67 Chamber businesses that make up our volunteer committees of Board of Directors, ambassadors, our young professionals, our military affairs. They're all businessmen and women of Schertz, Cibolo, Selma, and a few outside of that, and we just thought that was pretty awesome. We ended the year at 486 in membership, 95 new members, and I think the most awesome thing that we found is that in the expenses of our budget, we are using our member services too. So we actually expense $212,000, almost $213,000 to members in the area. Schertz businesses got the brunt of it. We found out over $43,000 in services that the Chamber needs to operate was spent within Schertz. City of Schertz in particular, we spent $21,000, almost $21,600 in renting buildings, in doing different things with the City of Schertz. Selma businesses $15,000, Cibolo businesses $10,000. So almost half of the budget that we spent in expenses to maintain the Chamber were spent in our 3 sister cities. We were pretty happy about that. Our marketing, the business directory with all 3 cities within it has gotten great response, mailed out to over 25,000 residents and businesses, and our website had over 94,000 views on it. And it was interesting, the demographics, that the majority are male. That's pretty unusual. Usually it's female heavy. And new visitors that are coming are 88% of all the visits that we had, meaning that they're looking for businesses in our area. They're looking for services. The main page got the most hits, with second being the business directory and then the events calendar. Local advocacy that we did, 23 meetings of advocacy last year with all 3 cities and businesses that are grateful for that, and letters of support. So we were not only local, we were regional, state, and national. And then I believe this is the last one, our community connection. Out of the 7 events we produced last year, we had 8,900 attendees of residents, contributions of almost 25,000 to our high schools, to connections, to project graduation. Our luncheon mixers, coffees at the Chamber, 2,400 attendees of businesses, 4th year in the top 10 of top chambers in the area. And we took first place in social media with the Texas Chamber of Commerce executives. So pretty happy about that. And these were our top 3 goals. We want a branch of the Chamber of Commerce in all 3 cities. We have our second one that just opened up. We are now operating our chamber for Schertz, Cibolo, and Selma in the Selma city. We're at their visitor center. We're there 1 day a week. Cibolo is working on a place for us as well, so I'm looking at that happening within the next year. We're starting to do Facebook Live business ads. We just did one at VisionWorks. It was an awesome tour that he gave us, and Scott did a great job, and then Wood Forest National Bank. And then accreditation. We will find out next month if we get accreditation. And for those that don't know, only 205 chambers carry this distinction in all the United States out of over 7,000 chambers. And the closest one to us is the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber. They are the only ones that have accreditation in our area. So with that being said, those are our mission, our values, and our vision. I just wanted to correct a little bit of misinformation as well. I realized that it was stated that we receive funds from the City of Schertz, which we do not. We are a nonprofit 501c6. We're funded by our members. We're funded by our events. And if we do choose to have service contracts with the city, which we actually do have one right now with the City of Schertz, to run their visitor center, we have 3 contracts out with the cities of Cibolo, Selma, and Schertz to produce their pages of the business directory so that they don't have to do that expense within their city staff. Other than that, all of our funding comes straight from our membership and from our events. So I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that we are self-funded and we are a nonprofit organization that is separate from any city. But in saying that also, we are so appreciative of the partnerships that we do have with our sister cities. We want to continue promoting all 3 cities, and we have really enjoyed the partnership with y'all. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
He'll make it go away.
Okay, next up, Brent Bolter.
Brent Bolter, 2633 Cloverbrook Lane. Mr. Mayor, City Council, in watching or being here for City Council meetings in the wake of Mr. Kessel's firing, some things have come up, and I'd like to address some of those items as it applies to me and then get to a more serious issue in the wake of Mr. Kessel's firing. It seems that stating a council member's name during the hearing of residence is an issue for some. The one time I did it was to praise one of the council members by name. So, going forward, I'll not praise any council members by name. Easy enough. In regards to the firing of Mr. Kessel, I brought up 3 concerns. How it was done, the lack of transparency in the aftermath of it being done, and that going forward, whomever is hired to be city manager will need to do a better job than Mr. Kessel, otherwise the firing will be a failure. At no time did I criticize any previous city managers, nor did I criticize by name any council members. I state all of that for the record. Now, to what I consider to be a serious issue for all of us in Schertz. The chamber president in a previous hearing of residents stated that she was speaking on behalf of dozens of business owners about what had gone on because they were afraid to come here and speak to you themselves because they feared retaliation for exercising that right. That, in fact, one business owner told her that it had happened to them the week prior to her speaking to City Council. I find that shocking. It's completely, totally unacceptable. I could use stronger words, but I won't. In a subsequent City Council meeting during the hearing of residents, a citizen stood up and told City Council that action should be taken by City Council against the Chamber because of the remarks made by the Chamber President. Specifically, any funding, and I stand corrected as to what evidently was being talked about, that there's a contract to the Chamber from the City of Schertz to handle the visitor center, I believe. But basically that funding should be pulled. That individual went on to say that he has people informing him of what goes on here because he isn't always here or bothering to watch the video of council sessions, and he'll know either that night or by the next day by name who said what, with the implication being that if he doesn't like what was said, he'll make sure that the transgressor is dealt with, like advocating, hey, you need to end that contract with the Chamber. By the way, for spies monitoring me, the name is Brent Bolter, just so you have that information. So I have to ask, is that what we're all about here in the City of Schertz? Making sure we intimidate people so they won't get up here and speak? Especially if what they have to say is counter to what a majority of City Council wants to do, or dare cross one resident of Schertz that wants his agenda followed? that folks will actually suffer economic blowback if they have the gall to get up and exercise the right to be heard? Now, I wasn't aware of what two individuals were going to say before I got up here, but to me, I find it somewhat interesting. You know, folks, there is a thing called the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, and it guarantees that we have the right to free speech, and that would be all the way down to this level of government. We, the citizens, have a right to be heard, regardless of whether you agree with us or not. We have a right to speak. And that extends to you too, all right, which is what one of the commentators, I believe, was talking about. It's not just us, but it's you as well. I took an oath when I enlisted into the United States Air Force, and in part of that oath, I swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I said those same words when I entered the office I currently hold. Individuals or bodies that are trying to deny our First Amendment rights by fear and intimidation and threats seem to me to be dancing really close to the definition of domestic enemy. I, for one, will continue to speak out against these attempts to suppress the right for the citizens of Schertz, or business owners for that matter, to come before this body and speak their minds freely on any topic. I can't state it any stronger. We should have the right to come in here and say whatever we want to say, so long as it follows the rules of decorum and those kinds of things, and threats aren't being made. But for people to threaten and intimidate and state that there will be repercussions for them to do so is completely unacceptable. That shouldn't be what we're about. We should be about letting people come up here and speak their minds. And if it goes counter to what the majority of the council wants to do, well, so be it. That's our right to say to you that we didn't agree with what you just did. Okay? Period. It shouldn't be any other way. So, again, I just find it ironic that other people tonight have spoken to the fact that there's fear about coming up here and speaking out on what's going on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Dana Eldridge.
Hi, guys. My name is Dana Eldridge. I live at 2628 Gallant Fox Drive in Schertz, Texas. Although the mailing address says Cibolo sometimes. I wasn't able to be here 2 weeks ago. I went to see my 90-year-old mother up in Kansas. It didn't ice and snow on me, so I was able to go. I was going to talk to the council about a suggestion that Mr. Larson had made in regards to having members of the community, business staff, help, if possible, when it comes time that the application or the job opening comes out for our city manager. We have qualified people in our city. We have some really smart people in the community that have looked at resumes and looked at those kind of things, either in their business, their military life, or even currently, that could help you if the numbers become too large for you guys to look at them all at one time. That committee should be made up of at least 2, if not 3, from the council. And after get down to the final 10, or the top 10 selections in the resumes, go slower or louder. It then comes back to the council. You guys make the decision, not the community. But we would like, or could help you if that would be a requirement. There are many people that would be willing to step forward to do that. You could use that help. It's just a thought. And also, congratulations on that number, or top 10 for our chamber. You must be doing a good job.
Yep, very strong. Thank you, sir. All right, next on the list, Robin Thompson.
Thank you all. Robin Thompson, 967 Oak Ridge, Schertz, Texas. It's been about a month since the majority, or a little over a month since the majority of the council asked Mr. Kessel to resign. And since I came up here and asked for financial accountability and transparency by the council regarding the expenses associated with the majority of the council's decision. To date, we have not heard anything back on that. I know that there is a mention that you were seeking what legal counsel and what you can and cannot share. Simply put, we would ask that when can we expect a decision? When can we expect what degree of transparency is going to be shared? When can we begin to find out as citizens and taxpayers exactly how much the majority of the council's decision is costing the taxpayers of Schertz? I believe that is fair and just for the taxpayers. Second thing I would like to say is, as a pastor, one of the things I was taught when working with leaders in the church is direct from Scripture. It says, do not entertain an accusation against an elder except on the basis of 2 or 3 witnesses. I find it very coincidental tonight that the word retribution or that effect has been brought out twice. Once by a former police officer and by other residents, by the chamber president. But this is my question to the council. If there is an atmosphere of retribution, if there is an atmosphere that is discouraging feedback, I believe it is your duty to find out why. I did not believe it was present when I was there on council. I'm not saying it was or wasn't or because of me. I'm just saying now we have people coming out and speaking openly about it. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And I would just encourage, however possible, these concerns are very serious, and I trust that the council will take them just as seriously.
Thank you, sir. And John Sullivan.
I'm going to use this, the computer for maps. Is that possible? John Sullivan, 513 Triple Crown. I just want to pull up Google Maps. I normally wouldn't come up here to talk about a road. I would probably just talk to city staff directly. But I feel this has been on my mind for a while, and since I moved here, really. And it's just been getting worse. And with development coming, it seems like it's going to be even worse. So Old Wiederstein Road and Wiederstein Road, it's in the city of Schertz, but I feel like it might take some political will and some cooperation with the city of Cibolo to find funding, maybe grant, something like that. And we really need a plan to address the road and the future of it. You know, it's always been a problem. You know, it's kind of a 2-lane road. I don't know if you've been out there, but every time it rains, there's potholes. And, you know, Public Works, they do a great job coming out, filling the potholes every time it rains. But with the traffic, it's just becoming a lot more burdensome. So, you know, we have the new development coming at the corner of 35, and that's kind of like a regional thing with Santikos. And more recently, like Turning Stone here, it backs out to Dean Road. So now they have a back entrance to come out here and get south on 35. So this intersection here with Old Wiederstein and Civil Valley Drive, if you want to turn left here at peak hours, it's a mess. And that's, you know, when I come down here, many of us here in Northern Schertz, if we come down here, we don't want to fight our way onto 35. We might take that way to come down here. So it's a kind of a critical access point to come down to Central Schertz. Another issue that I've noticed is there's a lot of walkers. I even saw a guy last night walking his dog at dark down Old Wiederstein. So there's like pedestrian issues. Kids in these neighborhoods between Belmont Park and Willow Point, they attend the same intermediate school. So, you know, I've seen kids riding their bikes back and forth. But in general, it's just, it needs improvement. And with the development in Cibolo, I know they're contributing a lot, but we do use this road in Schertz, and with the development coming, a regional attraction type of development, I just see more people from these neighborhoods trying to get down here on their bikes and in cars. So I feel like we need a plan. It's probably going to take some political will, so I wanted to bring it up to council. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that's everyone that I had signed up this evening. Tell you what, I would like to, I think with council's indulgence, since we do have a public hearing, that we might move to item number 7 next, so that anybody that's here that would like to speak before the council on that would have an opportunity to do so, and then we can take up the rest of our business. So item number 7, Ordinance 18S10, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending the official zoning map by rezoning approximately 1.5 acres of land from single-family residential, or R1, to office and professional district, OP. First, we'll have a staff presentation. When staff finishes up, we'll open it up for the public to comment to the City Council. And after the public hearing is closed, then we'll open it up to the council for discussion and potential action. Evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Sorry I didn't give you a heads up about moving things around, but
it's okay. It's all right. So the subject property that we're talking about tonight is 1.5 acres. It's currently undeveloped. To get your bearings, this is East Live Oak Road and 3009, and the subject property is here in green. On January 12th, 26 public hearing notices were mailed to the property owners within the red buffer, the 200-foot notice buffer. At this time, we've received 3 responses in favor and 1 response opposed. On the January 24th, at January 24th, we had our P&Z meeting that had the public hearing for this item. And then on January 31st, we published for tonight's public hearing in the San Antonio Express News. So as part of that recent UDC amendment, these are pictures of the zoning notification sign that was placed on the property on January 12th. So this is the zoning exhibit, just to get your bearings again. Live Oak Road is here, 3009, and then the subject property. Currently, the property is zoned single-family residential, or R1. Additionally, the properties to the west and south are also zoned R1. To the east, we have the 3009 right-of-way, and then to the north, it is apartment multifamily residential, or R4. The comprehensive land use plan through the future land use plan designates the subject property as single-family residential, which you can see here. The subject property is this black star. The objectives for single-family residential encourage a mix of residential uses as well as limited commercial development to support the daily activities of the development. The proposed rezoning is generally in conformance with the goals and objectives. The office and professional zoning district would allow for the limited commercial uses that single-family residential allows for. So office and professional district is not a zoning district that we see too often, so I wanted to provide the zoning definition out of the UDC. So it is intended to provide suitable areas for the development of office structures, as well as office park developments on appropriately designed and attractively landscaped sites. So office and professional district would be considered a commercial classification that would allow very limited office and professional. So in the Unified Development Code, we have our permitted use table, and only these 18 land uses would be allowed in office professional. Our next kind of limited commercial development, if you will, designation is neighborhood services, and it allows 34 land uses by right. So a lot less land uses by right are allowed in the office and professional. Based on land use compatibility with the surrounding single-family residential and apartment multifamily residential zone property, and the comprehensive land use plan stating that the single-family residential classification allows for limited commercial development, staff feels that the request to rezone office and professional is an appropriate zoning district. The proposed zoning should have a minimal impact on public services such as schools, fire, police, also existing and planned water and wastewater, as it is adjacent to 3009. The proposed zoning of office and professional district would provide for commercial uses that are appropriate and compatible with the adjacent residential uses. So as I mentioned earlier, the Planning and Zoning Commission did hold that public hearing on January 24th and offered a recommendation of approval by a unanimous vote. Then based on the goals and objectives of the comprehensive land use plan, the existing land use conditions, office and professional is the most appropriate zoning district for this property, and staff is making a recommendation of approval. And then we do have a representative, Ms. Karen Mitchell with Mitchell Planning Group, as a representative of the project that would like to make a presentation if you want to do that now or wait till you open the public hearing.
I'm going to do it during the public hearing. That's all right. All right. Is that all that you had as far as staff goes? Okay, perfect. So at this time, I'm going to open it up for public hearing. Would ask that anyone that would come forward would state their name and address and try to keep their presentation roughly to 3 minutes, but being the chair, as you saw earlier, I've got a little bit of leeway to allow things to go a little longer or whatever is needed. So at this time, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and I'll go ahead and invite Ms. Mitchell up first. Since you signed up and asked to speak during this time, please go ahead, and by you giving a presentation first, if the public has any commentary about that, they'll have an opportunity to hear it and then have an opportunity to speak.
Hello, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. My name is Karen Mitchell with Mitchell Planning Group, 7823 9 Mile Bridge Road out in Fort Worth, Texas. It was still winter when I left Fort Worth this morning, and I got here in Austin was 82 degrees, and it was like, it's Texas. Thank you for allowing me to come before you this evening, and also I'd like to thank your city staff for all the help that they provided to us to get to this point. I'm going to keep this as brief as possible. We've gone through a lot of this. Emily went through a lot, showing you the zoning map. We did try to reach out. We met with city staff prior to us coming in and submitting an application, hoping to get names and phone numbers of some of the neighborhoods so that we could try to hold a neighborhood meeting. There wasn't really anything established HOA, so we went ahead and sent letters to a few of the surrounding property owners. One did call us back. We were actually very excited that we had about 3 different people that came to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that had questions of us, so we were able to address some of their concerns, and hopefully we took care of that, met them even afterwards in the parking lot and talked to them. But basically, the concern that the neighborhood had had previously whenever there was a zoning application on this particular piece of property for, I believe it was retail, is they didn't really know exactly what was going to go on the site. We know exactly what it is that we are proposing for this site, and what it is that we are proposing is a dialysis facility. And so it is a very, very low impact medical type facility. As a lot of you know, and staff brought it up in the staff report, this is really what we refer to as a transitional zoning. So when you have residential and then you have property adjacent to it that faces onto what we refer to as a primary arterial, you usually see a transitional zoning put into place, and a lot of times that is a low impact office type use. And that is what it is that we are proposing on this piece of property. Benefits of it is the fact that it is the lowest of all of the intensities of the non-residential uses. No retail is allowed by right or even with an SUP. Typically, it's a Monday through Friday use. It's closed on the weekends, closed on evenings, low impact that does not generate a whole lot of traffic. Getting into the specifics about our particular piece of property, dialysis open to the patients from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. There's going to be 3 shifts, but those 3 shifts, they will only have half of the stations open at one time because dialysis takes about 3 to 4 hours, and then after that, they have to spend another 2 hours in order to clean each one of the stations. So it's kind of a shift type deal, but it closes at 5 o'clock. We can't develop this property as it is zoned. Your UDC has provisions in it that really don't even allow us. As a matter of fact, specifically, it says there shall be no residential lots facing directly upon a major street. The lot itself being a 1.5 acre tract of land, if you were to get residential, you would have to try to put an internal street in it, and it can't be done because the lot's just too narrow. So in summary, as I stated, it's a much lower impact. It's, y'all know what the state highway is. It's a primary arterial. We comply with the comprehensive plan. We're a low-impact transitional use. And the staff said Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval unanimously. That may be the fastest I've ever done a presentation, so hopefully it got all the points across.
That's well done. Very good. Anyone else that would like to address the council on this, this zoning case? All right, if not, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, public hearing is closed, and we'll open it up to council. So, council, questions? Anyone? Mr. Gutierrez?
Looking at the lot, I think it's 4 acres, and they're only using 1.5. Am I correct? It's 4-acre lot if we combine them all.
So they're each individually owned. So it is only the 1.498 acres that is under the zoning, because that is the property that is owned by Mr. Dietz.
Now,
so it's not.
My other concern is that this is a major road. 3009, left-hand turn, impossible.
So all of that access will be determined by TxDOT at time of platting. So when they come into plat, that is when TxDOT does a full review and determines kind of their driveways, and if it'll only be, a right-hand turn, right in, right out, they'll review all of that, and then they also review it again at site plan. We can't approve or take the plat for approval to the P&Z until we get TxDOT to sign off. Same thing with the site plan. We can't approve the site plan until TxDOT has given their approval.
Thank you.
Mr. Edwards?
How many curb cuts are you thinking about putting in the curb cuts, Ms. Mitchell?
TxDOT's only going to allow one.
One, okay.
All right, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 18S10.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Dr. Kaiser. Other comments, questions from council? I'm going to make a comment on it. Okay, it's not mine. I just want to make sure it wasn't mine. It happens. It's all good. It happens. Don't worry about it. I had my phone on one evening, and the phone rang, and it was actually the mayor of Cibolo, and I was kind of embarrassed because I'm in the middle of a council meeting. I said, well, maybe they're calling because they want to buy some water. It didn't go over well in Cibolo the following week. So anyway, what I'd like to say is this. Many years ago, a potential development came up on these parcels when I was still a voting member of council. At that time, it was for a retail strip mall type of development. At that time, I voted against it, and probably drew the ire of the family a bit because they wanted to sell this land and develop it, and they have a right to do so. I think that this is a great use, and at the same time, the residents that live in the nearby neighborhoods were, kind of put on notice. If you really want this land never to develop, and this was Mayor Baldwin's comment, buy it. And of course that didn't happen, so I'm also in support of this, and even though I don't get a vote, I wanted to say that I'm in support of it, just because I think it'll be a great development for the city of Schertz. That said, I do have a motion, a second, and I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, the motion carries. All right, so I'm going to go back to our regular order of business this time. Gone through the hearing of residents. We've taken care of item number 7, which had the public hearing. The next item we have this evening is a workshop, which is an update regarding the City of Schertz quarterly financial statement. Mr. Walters.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I will go over the first quarter. Where's my... Sure, where's that? Let me see if I can get the zoom in higher. So I'm going to go over the first quarter financial statements for the City of Schertz. I'm going to hit some of the highlights on the summary, and then I'll take any questions you have, any specific lines or funds that you have. So this is through the end of December 31st of 2017. Goes from October 1st is when it started. Theoretically, this is the 25% through with the budget. So you expect majority of the expenditures to be around 25%. and in most cases, some of the revenues will be around the 25% mark. However, we do start collecting property taxes in December. The bills go out toward the October timeframe, so some people pay early, even though they're not due until January timeframe. So you'll notice the revenues for the general fund are higher than 25%. That's due to the property taxes that people are paying early. You'll also notice at the bottom for the general fund, the expenses are at 27.5. Now, those are normally much more trending to the fiscal year, and you expect them to be closer to about 25%. But I was going to draw your attention to the year-to-date encumbrance. So those are the items that we've approved the purchase for through our financial software. We have a purchase order. It may be ordered or it may be about to be ordered, but it's not an expense yet. But that's already taking some of that budget away and preventing us from using it, so it shows up as the budget's already been used, even though we haven't spent the money yet. So that $1.1 million in upcoming purchases equal to about 3%. So the overall expenditures are actually closer to about 24%, bringing us more in line with the actual expenditures of the first quarter. The general fund does have about $14.5 million in cash and investments in its name at the end of the first quarter. I want to touch real fast. The special events fund does have expenditures over revenue for the first quarter. A lot of the events that we have are funded through interfund charges from the general fund, and we haven't usually make those transfers at the end of the year. So currently that is, while it's negative right now, that is acceptable, and we do have the funds. We're just waiting to transfer. Under the water and sewer fund, we have approved additional funds that come out of reserves for the tank paintings, the water tower paintings. So that is the $486,000 you see over on the budget, the negative over under. So those are coming out of reserves, or planning to come out of reserves. You'll notice their revenues are tracking much closer to the 25% mark. That's actually a little bit high. As when the winter months start rolling in, less people are watering the yards, we get a little bit more, so we'll actually usually have a bump in revenue towards the summer months. The expenditures are actually at 12%. Those are a little bit low. We have not yet made or required to make the contributions to SSLGC, CCMA, and CVLGC, which are large contributions that usually come towards the second quarter of the fiscal year. So this is still the first quarter. Page. Just a couple of things on the EMS fund. You see the year-to-date encumbrance is quite high. That's the ambulances we have actually ordered, and they'll be coming in. So those are already approved, and that's the purchase order you see there. Under the park fund, the park land dedication fund, you see the large encumbrance, the $109,000. Remember the previous council meeting, we approved a budget amendment. This is the outstanding balance on the Playscape restrooms. So that's what that large amount is that's eating up a lot of that budget. And finally, I wanted to look at the INS fund, which is entirely funded through property taxes and a little bit from a contribution of pledged revenue from the Economic Development Corporation. You'll notice their revenues are at 45%, seeing how they're a much larger percentage of property taxes in this fund. The result is even more drastic than what you see in the general fund, which has other sources of revenue. The expenditures, we have 2 bond payment dates throughout the year. One is in February and March timeframe, and the other one is in September and August. So those are the only 2 times you'll really see a large amount of budget being used up in that fund. So when we look at the next quarter, the second quarter, you'll see a large amount taken out of that fund when we make our first bond payments at the February-March timeframe. And that's all I have for the summary. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Very good. Council questions? Does not appear that there are any. Mr. Walters? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, next workshop that we have this evening, an update regarding Phase 2 Parks and Engineering fees. Ms. Shrum, good evening.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, Mr. James. We're here tonight as part of the fee schedule review that we're doing for all the citywide fees. We were here before for Part 1, and this is Part 2 of the Parks and Recreation fees. These deal with our partnership agencies and the fees that we charge through those agencies. So those categories tonight are the BVYA registration fees, the CISA registration fees, the Senior Center membership fees, the outdoor pools admission fees, and the Recreation and Aquatic Complex membership fees. So first, let's talk about Buffalo Valley Youth Association. For those who don't know, they offer fall and spring baseball, softball, football, cheerleading, volleyball, and swimming. Those registration rates are determined by BVYA. Generally, they're about $60 to $125, depending on the sport. And we do charge $10 more per registration for the non-residents. The Schertz Youth Soccer Alliance, known as CISA, it's made up of 3 different leagues that provide soccer for the community: GRACA, the YMCA, and the Lions Football Club. Those registration rates are also set by the leagues. Generally, they're $65 to $150 depending on the program, and they also charge the $10 more for the non-residents. So with those youth sports registration fees, you can see there's not a huge differential between the resident and non-resident fees, and that's really not the intent of the partnership. Our intent is to provide the affordable youth sports opportunities for the community and promote lifelong health and wellness. Schertz has really been the leader in the past in sports facilities. So if kids from Marion want to come and play in our leagues, we welcome that participation. I think we can all agree that that's kind of the intent that we have going into these agreements. Senior Center membership fees, $36 per year or $3 per month for our seniors to join the Schertz Area Senior Center. Membership is open to the community. That rate was set initially by the city, and it has been maintained by the YMCA that now manages that facility. That rate includes all the Senior Center activities, and that includes access to the aquatics or the rec programs at those facilities that are listed on the senior activities calendar. We also have the free lunch program, which you're aware of as well. Outdoor pools admission fees. So these fees are still set by Schertz and retained by Schertz, even though the outdoor pools are managed by the YMCA. So we set these and review them in comparison to other cities. As you can see, not a lot of other neighboring cities have outdoor pools, so we just review and compare it to Converse, Live Oak, and New Braunfels. Our daily admission rates are $2. We do not charge a non-resident rate for that, and the only city that does is Live Oak. We do charge resident and non-resident rates for season passes, but you can see the prices there. They're pretty in line with other cities as well. We also offer pool parties at the outdoor pools. So residents can rent the outdoor pools for parties. They vary in fees depending on the number of guests. There is a slight differentiation there between resident and non-resident rate. Swim lessons. We also offer swim lessons at the outdoor pools as well as the aquatic center. Those rates are set by the YMCA. They're $85 per session for residents, and non-residents are $100. It was set forth in that agreement that there is a 15% discount given to Schertz residents. So Recreation and Aquatic Complex membership. The membership rates now include access to the Recreation Center, the Splash Pad, and the Aquatic Center, since the Aquatic Center opened in 2017. The license agreement initially defined those rates, and the YMCA is responsible for setting those rates, and it is reviewed by their rate committee each year. The resident rates shall not be increased by more than 2% annually throughout the term of the agreement, and any rate increase in non-resident rates in excess of 5% must be reported to the City Council in advance of implementation. Schertz residents do receive a waiver for the joining fee, and Schertz residents initially received a citywide membership at branch rates. Now all memberships enjoy citywide reciprocity. They can go to any YMCA in the region. They also have nationwide reciprocity now. So if you're traveling on business, you can go to a Y in Boston or Seattle or wherever you may be. The YMCA also has a scholarship program, if you were not aware, to help all those who cannot afford to participate in those programs to have a chance to do so. So here's the breakdown of the rates for the last 9 years since we've been in the agreement with the Recreation Center. And the aquatic complex joined the mix, obviously, in 2017. Per the agreement, we do have a day rate for the aquatic center. That is $6 for individual, $15 for a family, for residents, Non-residents are $10 and $20 for the family. The rates have stayed static pretty much for the last 5 years for residents. Some of the non-residents have gone up and down a little bit over time, and you'll notice that there in the chart. I've got a couple of graphs here to show you. The adult membership rates, pretty consistent over time. We've actually gone down since we started in 2009 and 2010, a few dollars. We had a larger spread in the beginning. It's gone down a little bit now over time between resident and non-resident. Family 2 membership, that includes both adults in the household and all dependents, so that's one of their most popular ones. There's the rate differences there for the last 9 years. And then the senior membership, again, pretty steady throughout the 9 years. They did have a drastic decrease in 2018. The city wanted the Y to really work to make it affordable for our seniors, and they did so there in 2018. So as you can see, there's not a huge differential between the resident and non-resident fees. And again, that's not really the intent of the partnership. The intent is to provide affordable recreational and aquatic programs for the community. The YMCA has said they are committed to not raising rates for the residents of Schertz. They haven't changed in 5 years. And so over time, that differential may go back up as they do tend to raise non-resident rates. So I just wanted to highlight the value we get from the partnership with the YMCA. We get a really high level of service. We get partnerships on free community events. They're a great partner for us at Trunk or Treat, Polar Bear Plunge, Dunkin' for Pumpkins. All those events are free to the community. We get high levels of volunteerism for their staff. They were all at the Schertz Summer 5K volunteering. They volunteered to cook pancakes for our movie in the park. Freddie and crew were out there doing that. They do partnerships with other community organizations as well, after school programs, summer camps at the school district. And they're also building a facility in Cibolo, as you know. And so all the community will have access to both facilities now in Schertz and Cibolo. So that's it for the fees. Any discussion or questions on those?
All right, council, questions on this first portion? Mr. Davis?
Any particular reason why on all the rates that we showed for the rec center, we don't include any of the corporate rates that they charge for corporate members, such as SCUCISD, the City of Schertz?
I did receive that data from them today. They gave me a list, and yes, they do have corporate memberships for the school district, City of Cibolo, the county, the City of Schertz. And that's just not something that we collected for this chart at the time.
We can
get that for you.
Councilmember, if you'd like, we can come back with that data.
Yeah, I'd like to know what they charge for their different corporate rates, and I'd also like to know what the utilization is for our city recreation center versus residents versus non-residents, and broken down by whether they're paying family to $91 a month or $93 a month, or whether they're paying a corporate rate because of some membership in some other organization.
Yes, we could do that. We're working to get quarterly reports. That is part of the agreement. So we will bring that to the Parks Board in April once we get that first quarter report, and we'll request that information.
All right, anyone else? Mr. Edwards?
I like the fact that we're doing this, but also I just want to say, are we forecasting or asking this question because of the new facilities that are being built around the area? We're still growing, but Cibolo is growing fast, and they're putting in a lot of different facilities. Are we forecasting that our fees will be going down? Because I think if not, we need to start looking at that trend. Maybe a lull in our fees going down?
Sure. So I don't know that we're necessarily looking at the fees going down as a result of that. I think I'll give you my reaction, and Ms. Strum can certainly chime in. I think, frankly, the bigger concern, there are two concerns that staff has had with the fact that Schertz has sort of had that only facility in the area. One of which is the number of folks that are using the facility, and frankly, it can get fairly crowded there. And then that can sort of dissuade from folks from using the facility. And so I think what we would say is it's a positive thing that Cibolo, or that another community is building a facility, because it effectively sort of spreads that usage over multiple facilities instead of one. I think the other thing that it does to some degree is, frankly, and we'll have the data that Councilman Davis asked for, that, with a lot of our facilities, because Cibolo is the largest community nearby, the bulk of the non-resident folks tend to be Cibolo residents. And so one issue that I think certainly is a valid concern is, our residents are paying for the debt on these facilities to get it built, but then, it's fairly close in terms of the cost to participate and to utilize. And so I think the other positive, it sort of deals with that issue, because effectively what you'll now have is Cibolo doing the same thing to build and pay for that facility, and it sort of spreads or spreads the cost to folks. And I think one thing that staff has been looking at that we heard from council is initiating discussions about getting Cibolo, because they're the largest non-church user of the senior center, to make a contribution going forward for the meal program. And then certainly as we work with them on library and things like that, if they get ready to do that, have some of those reciprocal agreements, so that, again, we've kind of, as the big city, we no longer continue to pay for everything. As they grow, they build facilities that our folks benefit from. I think is how we look at it, as opposed to fees coming down, because it costs what it costs to operate to some degree. And you can argue that unless the membership doubles with the new facility, you're operating two facilities at least.
I would agree. I think the value keeps going up as we add facilities. And just so you know, the YMCA looked at it really holistically, and they designed that new center in Cibolo to have features that the Schertz facility doesn't have. So it's not just a repeat, it provides more opportunity. Same thing with the sports fields in Cibolo. If you sign up for soccer at the Y, you may be playing at the Schertz soccer complex, you may be playing at the Cibolo complex. So,
which is a good thing. I think the amount of people that are using it will actually prolong the life of the facility as well. So that should go down some. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Doesn't appear that there is, so we're going to move on, I guess, to the next portion, which are engineering fees. Thank you, Ms. Schrum.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Mr. James. Let's see. So mine is much quicker than that. We only have a couple of permits that we charge fees for in the engineering department. The first is our grading and clearing permit, and that's a permit that's required for any land disturbing activities greater than 1/10 of an acre, or any, no matter how small, of disturbance within a floodplain. The purpose of the permit is to ensure appropriate planning and design and control of earth disturbing activities to minimize erosion and sedimentation and protect the environment. You can see the fee structure. It is very nominal. It's generally related to another permit, either a development permit where a subdivision is being built, or a building permit where a commercial facility is being constructed. And those fees for those permits are generally the ones that we recoup much more cost for. But this does offset a little bit of administrative cost, and it allows us to keep track of what's going on out there. So the historic revenue that's been generated from the clearing and grading permit for the last 4 years, generally between $5,000 to $10,000. We're tracking along at about the same rate this year. Our other permit that we do generate more revenue from is the development permit, and that's a permit that's required for construction of public improvements. So that's a street, drainage, water, wastewater, most commonly part of a residential subdivision, but at times commercial as well. So our current fee structure, very simple. It's 1% of the construction cost that's based on the engineer's estimate at the time of construction plan submittal. So what we've generated over the years, and this is fairly non-predictable. We can predict it within a few months because we'll have plat applications coming in, but it's all dependent on what development is taking place. So we had a little bit less going on in 2013-14, and we've been as high as close to $150,000 in 2015-16. And what is involved in this is pretty significant time spent either by staff or consultants in plan review time, and also inspections in the field during construction and monitoring of the work for the warranty period. So that's it for engineering fees.
Very good. Questions, council? Doesn't look like there are any questions. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, again, with council's indulgence, I believe we have another guest that's joined us this evening, so I want to move to item number 9, if I may. Item number 9 is Resolution 18R19, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to sign an interlocal agreement for property usage between the City of Schertz and the Cibolo Creek Municipal Authority regarding temporary housing of Fire Department Engine Number 3 and other matters in connection therewith.
Oh, Mayor, Council, I brought with me tonight our good friend Clint Ellis from CCMA, some of our partners we've been working with for this location. We've got an agreement in front of you worked out tonight, and we just updated the cost for that. We estimate that it may cost up to $20,000 to get into this location, and I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
I just want to say, first of all, from the chair, that I appreciate the work that's been done on this. I really appreciate the partnership. This is going to give us an opportunity to have a presence in the southern side of Schertz almost immediately, and that's much needed. And this is a great, and Chief, just again, a great midway compromise to get this going before we actually have brick and mortar. Very well done, and I can't thank you enough. All right, Council.
Okay.
Mr. Edwards?
I want to say something. Thank you for thinking outside of the box and going forward. You saw the response times and you felt like it was unacceptable. And I'm telling you, this is a great thing going forward. We need those units out there to protect that area. And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 18R19.
Second. I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Mr. Crawford. Other comments from council, questions? If none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 7 ayes and no nays. Motion carries. Gentlemen, thank you. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to return now to our regular course of business, and our next workshop is roadway impact fee update. So Ms. Woodley, joint thank you again. It's all yours.
Okay. So I'll talk with you a little bit longer for this one. We thought it would be a good idea, in advance of the public hearing that's scheduled for March 13th on the roadway impact fee program, to come back, give you a little bit of a refresher, and go over a bit of the recommendation that's going to be presented to you. You'll get a formal written recommendation from the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee in advance of that public hearing, but also to sort of go through some of the numbers and give you some idea of where we stand with respect to comparison with other cities and what the ramifications or the actual impact, no pun intended, it's really hard not to say that, but the impacts to development with this roadway impact fee. So with that, and I'll run through a lot of this real quick, some of it is repeat information. Also, I'd want to point out there's going to be a lot of data in here, and we'll get a copy of this presentation to all of you tomorrow. We'll also be posting it on the website so that the development community can look through it. And if there are any questions after tonight, after you've had some time to digest it, feel free to just give a call, and I can walk you through some things and send out clarifications if necessary. So our master thoroughfare plan was adopted in July of last year. Not earlier this year, later last year, the land use assumptions and roadway capital improvement plan were adopted by you all. The capital improvement plan, as a reminder, is based on the master thoroughfare plan. It includes all the projects identified as necessary to meet the needs of projected growth. The purpose of roadway impact fee, again, is to provide a funding mechanism, not the funding mechanism, but a mechanism for identified improvements necessary to accommodate the projected new growth over a 10-year planning period. So here again is a look at the adopted thoroughfare plan. And then the capital improvement plan, which you can see on here, all of the red segments are part of that plan, and it's broken down into the 4 service areas. The total value of that capital improvement plan is approximately $229 million. The total cost that has been calculated as attributable to new growth over this 10-year planning period, and that's after a credit for ad valorem tax, and that's the reason for that is so there's not double dipping. It's already expected that new development will be paying ad valorem tax, and that some of that tax will be used for construction of added capacity. Therefore, we subtract that out and credit it so that we don't double dip and charge that new development twice. So the total cost attributable to that new growth after that credit is about $57 million. So someone has to pay for that. So what are some sources of funding for those improvements? Property tax revenue, current citizens and businesses, bond revenue, just a reminder, debt funding may require tax increases as well as property tax revenue, grants, matching funds, state and federal. We've been looking more and more to find additional funding, like, for example, the AMPO call for projects where we could get some federal funds to help with some of the state roads. And then another possible source of funding would be the roadway impact fee. I also want to point out that the process that we've gone through, all the calculations and the procedures are governed by the Local Government Code, Chapter 395. Some of the benefits of having a roadway impact fee program is to alleviate the full burden of the new facilities on the existing tax base and allow growth to pay for growth. It provides a systematic, structured, and predictable approach to the assessment of the fees and allows that upfront knowledge by the developer of the fees. It also fairly distributes the infrastructure costs based on the demand of new development, not just their location and proximity to a thoroughfare that is on the master thoroughfare plan. So the maximum allowable cost per service unit that were calculated for each one of the service areas are shown here. So by state statute, you would not be able to adopt a rate in any one of those areas that exceeds those rates. But you could adopt something less or considerably less. So to go over the policy considerations that the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee did review and their recommendations, the considerations included these bullet points. One, do we want to charge the same rate citywide or a different fee as allowed in the different service areas? And what the recommendation there was is to charge the same rate citywide. There didn't seem to be any particular concern for incentivizing or discouraging growth in a certain area, and it also makes it much more easy to facilitate the program. Another consideration was, should we charge different fee rates for residential versus non-residential? And the recommendation there is yes, to definitely charge different rates. I'll go over those rates in a minute. Should there be a cap established for a maximum fee? And it was recommended that there not be a cap. Should we write into the ordinance incremental increases in the fee, start low and move up over time? And yes, that is being recommended. And should there be a phase-in of the fee? And there is a phase-in that has been recommended. So the recommended base rates for residential, the first year, it's recommended that a fee of $600 per service unit, which equates to a little over $2,000 per single-family home, be adopted. The non-residential base rate is recommended for the beginning first year of $100 per service unit, and that equates to about $5,700 for a 10,000 square foot office or $2,400 for a 20,000 square foot warehouse, just to give you an idea of what that rate means. So as far as the incremental increases in these base rates, for residential, it's being recommended that the first 2 years, the $600 rate be adopted. After that, for years 3, 4, and 5, incremental increases to make each year $800, $900, and $1,000 per service unit, the fees for those years. So at the maximum of the 5-year period, it's recommended that the roadway impact fee for a single-family residence would be $3,370. For non-residential, it was is being recommended that the first 3 years be charged at $100 per service unit, and then bumped up to $175 per service unit for years 4 and 5. We're going through 5 years because per Chapter 395, the impact fee must be reevaluated and updated every 5 years. And there's certainly also an opportunity during that 5 years to go back and modify the fee as you see fit. One reason that we're doing the incremental increases is so we can get started, see how things are going, and determine, oh, we could be charging a lot more, or this is affecting development, we need to back off. So as long as we don't exceed those maximums during the 5 years, that's also a possibility. So as far as the phase-in, and this is just sort of a, we have to determine which projects will be assessed the fees. So in the local government code, it allows a 1-year delay of assessing fees for a lot which has already been platted. And it's being recommended that that be extended to 18 months, because generally developers, once they've gone through the process, they already have a platted property, they don't currently have an expectation, well, maybe now they do, but a year ago they didn't have an expectation that they would have a roadway impact fee, so they need time to build it into their business model. Development for a lot for which a preliminary plat was approved, but not a final plat, we're looking at a grace period of 1 year. In the government code, that can be done with no delay the day the ordinance is passed. Any other development would be charged the fee for a complete building permit application submitted after the date of adoption. Now we have a comparison of roadway impact fees. So these are looking at maximum and proposed rates for Schertz compared to some other Texas cities that already have a roadway impact fee in progress. So what you see here, the gray top line is the maximum allowable calculated rates for this type of a development. We've got a number of different development scenarios here. This one's a 20,000 square foot office. So in Schertz, we could charge a maximum of $182,000 in roadway impact fees for that facility. It's being recommended that we charge $11,380. And you can see the different cities. Some are charging the maximum allowable, such as Waxahachie and Cibolo in this case. Others have much higher maximum allowables, but they're choosing to charge a lower percentage of that. College Station, in fact, is charging a lower amount, and they are also taking the phased approach to increase their rates incrementally. 10,000 square foot shopping center, similarly, the recommendation is to charge significantly less than the maximum allowable fee, which really would be the lowest in any of the comparison cities. 100,000 square foot warehouse is also obviously significantly less. And then single family residence, this is where we're looking at the incremental increases. So we would start out around $2,022 for the single family residence. And that is comparable to some of the other cities, but again, it is significantly less than that maximum $5,000 per unit. We also did a comparison of all development fees, and that's looking at construction development fees, building permits, and water and wastewater impact fees and whatnot. And economic development staff put a lot of time in and put this together. I'm not going to go into all the detail here, but basically what they did was they picked out 4 scenarios and looked at the different types of fees that would be due for each one of those scenarios and sent this out to a variety of different cities in the area to find out how, what's the development cost here versus development cost in other cities. And this is what the results look like. So this is a scenario of a 100,000 square foot warehouse. And what you see here, these different blocks represent different fees: building permit fee, plan check fee, site development fee, water impact fee, drainage fee, wastewater impact fee, and then roadway impact fee in every case is at the top if there is a roadway impact fee. So for Schertz, currently the top of this line is the fee that is charged today for a 100,000 square foot warehouse. If we added the maximum roadway impact fee that we could charge, it would fall closer to $600,000. The recommended fee puts it around $400,000, which is not excessively much more than, for example, San Antonio. For a 10,000 square foot retail facility, it's what is being recommended is even closer in line with some of the other benchmark cities: Pflugerville, San Antonio, and San Marcos. And again, the maximum allowable roadway impact fee would bring up the total development charges to $136,000. What's being recommended is that it be lower, so the total development charges would be $76,000. For a 20,000 square foot office, there are significantly lower fees. I think a lot of that is seen in water and wastewater impact fees. Ours, we don't charge just the city of Schertz water and wastewater impact fees, but we charge CCMA's wastewater impact fees, connection fees for San Antonio River Authority, and also SSLGC water impact fees. So we're kind of high on those numbers. The roadway impact fee would bump the total development costs up significantly. What's being recommended is that we fall on the graph around this point, which is very close to Cibolo. Single family residence, again looking at the same sort of scenario. The maximum would put us absolutely at the highest. The recommended rate is slightly over what the fees are being charged in Cibolo. So we also looked at some real-world examples. These are real facilities that have recently been developed or are currently being developed in the community. A-Smart is a large warehouse distribution center on Door Lane. It's next to the Caterpillar facility. It's got a square footage of 214,000, and its estimated development fees without the roadway impact fee totaled $133,000. We could charge another $130,000 for the maximum roadway impact fee, but it's being recommended that that be ratcheted down significantly to $17,000. Texas Plumbing Supply is an infill warehouse, a 35,000 square foot warehouse on Red Iron, which is off of 3009. Its development fees were $54,000. The maximum roadway impact fee could almost equal that, be a little bit more than that at $56,000. And what's being recommended for them, and this is based on the years 4 and 5 rates, so kind of the worst case recommendation during the planning period, of $7,000. So we've also run these same calculations for the medical office currently under construction at Schertz Parkway in Savannah, and the Sherwin-Williams that is on I-35 at Mid-Cities. I believe that's open now. And there's a Starbucks and retail center going in. I think they've currently started their site construction at FM 3009 and Elbel. And so you can see how the numbers fall out on that. You can see the development fees that are being charged, the maximum impact fee that could be adopted, and then what's being recommended. So looking at some real-world examples for residential development here in Schertz, we've picked a number of subdivisions. and tallied the vehicle miles that were actually constructed for those particular subdivisions. So, for example, the Homestead subdivision that's in northern Schertz along I-35, they constructed 869 vehicle miles as part of their first phase of development. And that first phase of development includes 356 dwelling units. So if we convert the dwelling units to vehicle miles also, they would, under the proposed program, get a credit of the vehicle miles that were constructed. It has a value based on estimated construction numbers in the capital improvement plan. And then there's a value of the demand. So again, based on the estimates in the capital improvement plan for a similar roadway. So there is an estimated value of the demand that they're going to place on the roadway system. This is new development that exceeds the amount that they constructed. Now, if they were to pay their rate at the year 5 rate, $1,000 per vehicle mile for the number of dwelling units that they're putting on the ground, that total impact fee would be $1,200,000. But because of the credit, the roadway that they did construct, their impact fee obligation would go down to $331,000. And that would be divided up as the developer sees fit. They roll the cost of the construction into the sale of the lands, and they would also roll the credit likewise. So we've got several other residential subdivisions here, Rhine Valley in southern Schertz, Cypress Point, which is also in far northern Schertz, Riata, Binzel Farms, which is almost complete at the intersection of Schertz Parkway and Live Oak. They're building an extension of Live Oak. And then there's Misty Woods. Now that's an interesting example because they did not have any obligation to construct. They're not adjacent to a thoroughfare from the master thoroughfare plan. So they're putting 36 dwelling units worth of traffic onto the road that has an estimated value, but they're not contributing anything to compensate for that. If they did have an impact fee to pay, they would contribute a portion of the demand. And you notice that the estimated value of the demand after the credit is still a large dollar number. The impact fee after the credit is significantly less than that, because remember, we're not recommending that you charge the maximum allowable. If you charge the maximum allowable, this column and this column would be equal. But we're recommending a lower rate, and therefore, this is substantially less. So the next thing I want to go through is potential fee generation based on the recommended rates. Some folks are saying, well, it's going to take a long time to gather up enough money to actually build anything meaningful. So we said, okay, well, what does our typical development look like? And how does that break down? So our planning department put together some typical development scenarios in each one of the 4 service areas and looked at, okay, how many single-family residences, how much square footage of office, medical office, shopping center, and warehouse. Now, obviously, they break down into many more categories than that, but this is for order of magnitude kind of guesstimation. So, as those are distributed among the 4 different zones, and even though we recommend charging the same rate across the city, the funds still have to be expended in the service area where they're collected. So we may collect $6 million, but that has to be split over, and maybe $5 million was in one particular service area, $1 million in another, and $2 in another. So it's important to remember they're still split among the different service areas, even though the rate would be the same. So if we developed at a rate like we've seen over the past 4 or 5 years, what would be generated in each one of these zones. And of course, this is after the grace period and the rollout and really getting into this thing and getting money coming in. But just for discussion purposes, if we started charging tomorrow and we developed it same way we've been developing, we could expect to generate the revenue shown here in each one of these 4 areas. So what can we do, for example, in Zone 1 with $245,000? Well, we actually have a prime project that we could look at. Eckerd Road is a residential collector, and I'll show you a picture here. You probably all know where it is, but here's Eckerd Road for our northern Schertz. This is Schwab. Obviously, here's 35. Cypress Point is a subdivision right here. And the Parklands subdivision is just finishing up their first unit of development up here. So the Parklands, and I believe, did that come before council for an agreement? The city has an agreement with the Parklands. This is I-35, this is Eckerd Road, and then this is a match line. You come down here and continue up Eckerd Road. So the Parklands sits here. So normally their obligation would be to construct half of this adjacent road, Eckerd Road, which is on the master thoroughfare plan. But that developer said, you know, I think we'd get a lot more bang for our buck if we went down here to 35 and improved this intersection at 35. It would make a much nicer early entrance to the subdivision. Cypress Point, over on this side, and then it jumps down and continues here, already constructed their half of Eckerd all across their frontage. So, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Let's transfer the obligation, oh, I apologize. The obligation to construct up here down to 35. Well, that's good, that's great. We're gonna, you know, have a nice entrance to a thoroughfare off of the 35 frontage road. And as this property, which is undeveloped, and this property, as those develop, they will be obligated to improve their half of the road. But Parklands is already developed, Cypress Point is developed, so we have a gap here, that there's no developer that will ever be required to complete that half of section of street. So we need some money to do that. The estimate to complete that section of street happens to be $271,000. Well, we were able to collect in Service Area 1 $245,000, so there's the funding for most of a project like that. So after all those numbers, just to let you know, we've been through a lot in the last couple months. We've met with boards and commissions. We've reached out and had focus group meetings with the development community, builders, residential developers, commercial developers, some existing commercial facilities, and then the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee, and they have come to a recommendation. Next will be the public hearing on March 13th, and the ordinance, you'll either have your first hearing or first reading of that ordinance that night, or if you decide you need some extra time, the following council meeting, and then hopefully adopt an ordinance in late March or early April. So with that, I can answer questions now. Again, we'll get you all these numbers, and so you can dig in and hopefully clear things up if they're confusing now or, or get more confused.
Very good. So can you go back one slide? Thank you. Capital Improvement Advisory Committee is a resident board. Committee of Committees Advisory Board is made up all of residents from the various boards, committees, and commissions within the city. Economic Development Corporation, all resident appointees. TSAC, all resident appointees. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different resident groups that have discussed this, vetted this, brought forth commentary. Is that all correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be sure. I'll open it up to council. Mr. Edwards, did you have something first? No? EDC, TSAC, Committee of Committees, Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. Well, I wasn't counting us. Counting us, it'd be 5, but we got a lot more to do. All right, Council. Mr. Larson.
I've got a few questions. Can you go back to the slide? I believe it's number 24. No, keep going back. The bar graphs. Okay. So looking at these two, it looks like for single-family residential, that number in fees only for one single-family home at the proposed level, I'm understanding this correctly, right? That's $13,000?
So the fees are actually less than that, and I'm looking
That's
back
with the recommended
recommended rate
impact
is
fee
$13,000
at its 5-year level.
That's correct.
And what do we know? I mean, we do off the top of our head the average cost of a single-family unit home right now.
I know that we had some information from the SCUC ISD that indicated the median house was $290,000.
Yeah, the average sale price or the median sale price of a new home in SCUC ISD in Schertz is about $290,000.
Okay. And then can you go back to the one more, I think, where it talks about the businesses? This one. Wow, this is like when you look at a car and you really love it, and then you go talk to the guy and he gives you the price. I know that that's the maximum allowable rate, and that's not what's being recommended.
Correct.
But that $238,000, I almost fell out of my chair. Even so, at the recommended rate, it looks like we'd be double everyone except Cibolo, at least double. That's significant. Can you tell me a little bit about the estimates on this? Does this include tree mitigation fees?
It does. I don't think it includes tree mitigation. It does include water impact, wastewater impact, drainage fee, permit fee. Let's see. I can go up here and
get
tell
up
you.
and cover what it. And I don't know. I'm not sure council has ever met Drew with our Economic Development Corporation. Works with Kyle. So, walk us through.
Yes, sir. To answer your question, so these were the only 9 fees that I put together this analysis. So these are the only 9 fees that we actually looked at. So tree mitigation was not included in that.
Do we have any idea of what the average per residential? I mean, I know it varies greatly, but I'm looking for an average per residential tree mitigation and per non-residential tree mitigation. What that number might be?
So we can provide you. In fact, I had some questions from council recently about tree mitigation. I can give you a listing of tree mitigation fees. The challenge on this, and again, they can be substantial, but the challenge on this is it tends to be very much an all or nothing, and if I don't see Lisa or Bryce getting up to help at this at all, and I'd appreciate if they would, to tell you what they think. But it seems to be, what we tend to find is you have sites that have a lot of trees, and if they have trees, they have a lot. They'll have them on drainage ways a little bit, or they tend to have been farmland, and they don't have a tree on them. We'll see what Bryce says, but what I would say is the large tree mitigation payers in the last 5 years tend to be not single family. The single family stuff tends to be farmland, doesn't pay as much relatively. It's the commercial stuff that comes in that tends to pick those sites. So again, Bush's Chicken was fairly substantial. The auto parts place next to it, Legacy at Forest Ridge was really high, as well as the daycare in front of it. So we can get you that listing, but Bryce may have it.
Yeah, so I ran some reports for Mr. James earlier in the week. Basically everything that we've collected since 2012. Mine, unfortunately, I misran it for his and didn't keep a copy, but it really is actually all fits on one page. And just kind of quickly going through here, most of the residential, that's even the larger stuff, is 15 to 20,000. I think the biggest one that immediately jumps out at me is Willow Grove Unit 3, which had 72,100. But if you're familiar with Willow Grove, I mean, it's just densely packed wooded area. And so they had to remove a lot, and actually we worked with them to do some really interesting things with some tree saving down there. But as Mr. James was saying, it's very dependent on that. And then the further one on that that's going to be a misnomer in some of this is, did the developer choose to work with the existing trees that are there to help reduce that amount, or did they just say, nope, I'm going to pay that amount and I'm going to make this land look like what I want it to look like? So,
Understood. And I guess, I don't know if they're not all questions, but can you go back to the chart with the maximum allowed fee for the non-residential? Yeah, that's any of those. That's the one you like? That's a good shock value one, yeah. One of the challenges I have with this philosophically is that there's something that I've learned. It's human nature. I'm part of it too. It's not unique, but as I talk to people one-on-one, a reality is everybody wants a bigger piece of the pie, and not very many people actually want to pay for that bigger piece of the pie. And I know there's a lot of people I meet and I talk to, and they say, oh, I'd be happy to pay that, I'd be happy to pay that. But I would venture to guess that the voluntary contributions to the city's funds that we get on an annual basis don't necessarily reflect people excited to add to their piece of the pie. And so when I understand that there's the human nature aspect of I want more and I want to pay less for it, and then I combine that with this powerful thing that studies psychologically have shown that my capacity to inflict pain on myself or my neighbor is pretty low, but my capacity to inflict pain on a person I've never met who doesn't even exist yet necessarily, well, it gets a little bit easier, right? It's not real. It's somebody else paying it. And so I look at this chart of what our maximum allowable fees are, and I look at a political environment where people are saying, hey, I want a bigger piece of the pie, but I don't want to pay for it. And then the government entity comes and says, hey, don't worry about it. We can slice that pie a little bit bigger, and it's going to be paid for by people who aren't even here yet. And they're going to be paying their fair share. And it's always their fair share when they're paying it, right? It's never the fair share when you're writing the check, but when someone else is, it's always the fair share. And so I look at how much, not only even at the recommended level, we're blowing everybody except for Cibolo out of the water, but then the capacity for growth in an environment that is incredibly easy politically to assess fees on, because it's on people that aren't even here yet. Oh, man, I just think it's a dangerous path to go down. And then to think that $13,000 in fees before you turned dirt for a single-family residential home, which, again, if you can go to that chart again so we can see how that would compare to other communities. I mean, that would put us the highest. Again, Cibolo's close, but no one else is even near that level. Luckily here, there's not as much room for growth. But to talk about wanting a community that's diverse, wanting a community that's welcoming, wanting a community, and then to say, hey, in addition to the cost created by market demand for a great community, we're going to add. We're already adding more than anyone else except Cibolo, but we're going to make sure we take the prize with that. That's a hard pill to swallow. That's a real hard pill to swallow. Man, it's really challenging. Tell me a little bit more about, I guess the per service unit is essentially per person. Is that correct? And based on an average of persons per unit?
No, it's based on the demand generally placed on the system from a single-family residence.
Okay.
No, so it's different for commercial, but for single-family, it's 3.37 vehicle miles per unit.
All right.
So at a rate of $1,000, it's 3,037, 370, sorry.
And can you go back to the slide that shows neighboring communities' impact fees as related to what we're proposing, I guess, for residential? We'll start there. So it looks like here on the residential at the 5-year, there's no comparable city that would be at the level that we would be at proposed. We would be, for our type of city, we would be the leading in roadway impact fees. Am I understanding that correctly?
Assuming these other communities maintain the rates shown here.
Yeah, well, and we know they're likely to raise because then everything raise. But, and then what about on the commercial?
Let's see. There's an office.
So here, at least that one doesn't look like we're trying to lead the way. I'd hate to develop in Waxahachie or Midlothian, though, that's for sure. And it looks like Cibolo is a little bit higher than us, and New Braunfels is about what we're proposing. Cibilo's a lot higher than us, and about what we're proposing. Do we have... But I guess when we go back to that total cost of construction in both of those, we're way ahead of both Cibolo and New Braunfels. So, yeah. All right. I mean, I guess you've explained it very, very clearly. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Edwards?
So when the builders come out or the developers come out, they look at the velocity of how fast they can turn their lots over. And so they look at that lift that they get. So they factor in, and I'm just, tell me if I'm wrong here, they're factoring in the amount. They look at each unit and they say, based on these 300 homes that I'm building here, I need to hit a certain price point for my investment, for my site improvement, for all the things that I've done to return my capital. So these numbers, for them to come in and to get all the profit out of the community without paying for any of the improvement besides what they're doing now, I think is wisdom. What we're simply doing is if we don't put these impact fees in place, what we're doing is we're leveraging the future of saying we have to pass more bonds every time a developer comes in or a development comes in, a commercial. We have to pass more bonds and put that on the taxpayers anyway. So either we go with the impact fees, or we're stuck with passing bonds in the future, and that's future bonds in a continual cycle over and over and over. So either you collect now and start alleviating that and leveraging, or we end up passing more bonds, affecting our bonding capacity each year, which will, again, increase taxes on our residents, including ourselves since we're residents. So I look at this and I see it as being responsible. It's far-reaching, but it's responsible. It's responsible because it's the future that we're trying not to leverage our future just by passing bonds. I think we're behind in this, actually. I really do. I believe that we're absolutely behind with impact fees. If you look at what other communities have done, it's amazing to me that this has been overlooked for quite some time. It is. So, and Scott, I understand. It's hard to say pass the fee because as conservatives, we think, hey, passing a fee is tantamount to passing a tax, right? Because a fee is considered a tax. That's the way you look at it. But as the real thing is, if we don't, we're still going to leverage and pass taxes in the future, raise taxes in the future for bonds. That's the way I view it. And please tell me if I'm wrong.
Mr. Crawford?
More of a comment, but somewhat of a question also. As I listen to what's being presented, and the slide you have on there gives me an example. And correct me if I'm wrong, please. Anybody can on the council dais or anybody, please. I understand this to mean to be basically a one-time set of fees that provide the water, the sewer, the streets, and those kinds of facilities, infrastructure, for us to have a house in the city of Schertz, or a business. I was raised on a farm, and just to help Scott have another opinion on that, we had a 4-inch water well and a 2-inch water well and a 12-inch water well. 2-inch and 4-inch were for the barn and the house. If we lost power or if something happened to the pump or the well itself, we didn't have water. So we would pay our impact fee by going to Sears and Roebuck and buying a new pump and having either my dad or somebody else come out and pull the 100-something feet of pipe out of the ground, put the pump back on the bottom, and drop it back down the hole. So I look at that as the fee we pay the city, actually the developer, when we buy the lot that has the water, the streets, the sewer, and those things attached to it. To help Scott out in a way to save less money, that fee gets built into the house when you buy the lot and buy the house. You don't pay it again. So save your money, buy the house, the market's down, and you'll get a better price on your house. And that'll include the water tap and everything you've got. That may not be a good way to look at it, but it is a a possibility. So we need to have the fees. They're allocated, they're measured. We have to have the service because we do count on that toilet flushing and that water being there to help out. So that's a comment to give you a perspective that we have to have some of these things because, as Mr. Edwards said, bonding everything isn't always the right answer either. And Mr. James can give you a more eloquent, better presentation of that concept than I can. But somebody has to pay for these things, whether we live in the country or live in the city. Short of living by a river and bucketing water out, that's maybe the only other choice. Thank you.
If I may apologize, Mayor, just as a point of clarification. So impact fees, you are correct, are a charge. We describe it as a one-time charge with new development, but then part of it is how we define new development. And it kind of is how those service units are allocated relative to the type of development. So to be clear, for single family, it's typically based on construction of the new home. I will say this, that with our, and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's both water and sewer impact fees, that as a new CO comes in, that may be re-looked at to see if it's a higher user, and so they may pay the differential between the original user and the higher user. You may remember, some of you, the case of, what is it, the restaurant, now it's slipping my mind, that moved, Lisa.
It was CBQ, and now it's
Abel's Diner. So we had that issue. To be clear, with roadway impact fee, we are proposing to craft the ordinance to say we charge it at time of building permit and we're done. I'm not going to come back at it with regard to changes in CO. So if a building were to come in initially at 50,000 square feet, we charge them a roadway impact fee. If that commercial building then came in and said, I want to add on another 20,000, we would charge the new 20,000, but as tenants move in and out of the original, we're not reassessing the fee, even if it's a higher trip generator. We just want to simplify it, frankly.
And then can I add one more point of clarification? The example of being in the farm and having the different wells, and if one well goes out, your fee is what you pay to replace the pump or whatever, and that's a little bit off because that would be operation and maintenance. And the impact fee is designed to pay for new capacity added to the system. So if the child of the farmer built a house on the farm and put in a new well for it, that would be their impact fee. So just wanted to make sure that we keep those clear.
Dr. Scagliola.
Yeah, you did a really good job of putting this together, but these slides themselves, they're snapshots looking 5 years into the future.
Yes.
When these are the maximum charges that we would collect. You know, it's a little misleading because chances are Round Rock, Pflugerville, San Marcos, and all the rest of them may implement impact fees along the way, and then we'd have to see. I was a little curious as to why you weren't charging the maximum. I said, hey, man, why don't we just take an average, you know, until I saw what some of our fees were. Okay, makes perfect sense now. So you did a real good job of portioning this out. I have no idea where your calculators come from, but you did a good job with the analysis. One thing, you know, what's the rationale behind the phase-ins? And you know, doesn't say you have to do it. You know, why are you recommending that?
Well, and to be perfectly clear, the recommendation to council comes from the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. So while staff did make recommendations to them, they chose to accept most of those recommendations to pass along to you, but not all. And in fact, one of them was to bump up the non-residential rate from 100 to 175 in year 4. I think a lot of it is to start with something that's a little bit less of a burden and allow for it to grow. And like I mentioned before, we may come back 1 year, 2 years from now with a recommendation to modify the rate at that point. Brian wants to add something.
If I may, I think the other part of the reason to phase in with the platting, for example, and give the delay is Some of those developers have figured out their pro forma already. They've made an assumption based on their cost, and to hit them on the front end, we think isn't necessarily consistent with the city's core values of do the right thing, treat other people the way you want to be treated. And so this gives them a bit of notice to factor that in as they go forward.
But the ones that have already laid out their plats, why wouldn't they be grandfathered anyway because of the 1 year look back?
So essentially what state law says is that it doesn't fully grandfather them effectively. Or state law says you don't have to fully grandfather. You've got to give them that year to kind of build. But that essentially the problem is, as I would assume, it's that you have a lot of property that gets platted and doesn't develop. So property may have been platted 20 years ago. Nothing's happened, nothing happened. It may sit another 5 years. And so then the issue is does that really make sense to not charge them a fee, or is the idea to kind of get them up to speed with everybody else? That's the logic of it, right or wrong.
Personal opinion, I think the 1 year grandfathering is probably a good idea, but to wait another 18 months before we fully implement the policy seems a bit long. As I said, this is a long time in coming. It's about time we finally got around to addressing our infrastructure needs. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, a lot of good data here, and I look forward to reading this offline. But I got to say, I'm not a fan of the blue on blue on blue on gray on blue. On this particular slide, if I'm reading this correctly, this does not represent a roadway impact fee for Cibolo on office space for 20,000 square feet? If I'm going by the colors?
Could you restate the question, sir, just so I make
This is this slide here. If you look at Cibolo, this is not representing a roadway impact fee?
Correct. So just a point of clarification on the data. Some of the communities did not. I reached out to the communities, went through their fee schedules, whatever resources that were available. The 3 communities that did not get back to me with full data sets were New Braunfels, San Antonio, and Cibolo. Okay. Cibolo provided. I managed to calculate everything out with the information provided. The only thing that I could not find was the roadway impact fee. It's a little bit tricky to calculate, and they've not gotten back to me yet as to how that is. So there is a fee missing, and you may see fees kind of within those communities that are.
That's what I wanted to get to. And if you can you bring one for residential? So single-family residential. This one you were able to calculate the roadway impact.
Yes, sir. This one is readily available. The other ones you have to go in and calculate.
So compared to Cibolo, and does San Antonio have a roadway impact fee?
They do not.
Okay. So in this one here, our projection would be about $500 higher than the Cibolo. But if we go back to the previous one on the office space, we're projecting $76K theoretically, and Cibolo is already at 82, which is $6,000 more, but they have some sort of a roadway impact fee on top of that we're just not aware of.
Correct.
Okay.
So the number is higher.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Gutierrez, do you have anything?
Yes.
Okay.
I too echo the same concerns to Mr. Davis that the colors, it's hard to distinguish which one's which. But my question is on the impact fees. Once it's collected, who determines what part of the service area gets the construction?
Ultimately, it's city council. So again, and James is here. The impact fees go into a separate pot of money to be spent just on adding capacity for roads in that service area. So whenever the city spends money, either through the budget or as we do adjustments coming forward the annual budget, council approves those. And so those would be the things. So you may recall you approved some items to do some tank painting. I don't think that didn't use impact fees because it was maintenance, but for example, the Woman Hollering Creek sewer line, the trunk line, the design of that is using roadway impact fee or utility impact fees, or sewer impact fees, sorry. And so ultimately, council gets to decide how the money is spent. Now, there's a recommendation from the CIAC that's required by state law, but it's ultimately council's call.
But it will be provided as what portion will be from the road impact fee and what portion would not be from the road impact fee when we make that determination?
Yes, sir, you would.
Okay.
Mr. Larson?
When you presented this to the development community, and what kind of feedback did you get from them?
Well, one point is that when we presented it to the development community, we only had the maximum rates to present. There was not a recommendation for actual rates at that time. We gathered the feedback, and then once we had the feedback, took it to the CIAC to discuss. So we got general feedback. Obviously, they'd prefer if there was no fee. Some appreciated the predictability because currently we operate based on San Antonio's rough proportionality calculations to determine what improvements will be required by a developer, and it gets kind of cumbersome and not particularly predictable for some subdivisions. Many of them do recognize that they understand the credit system, and they appreciate that and recognize that this will be an additional fee, but they understand that it will be used to add capacity into the community and ultimately make it a better deal for the product that they've developed. Some of the larger commercial properties that are already developed may be looking to expand. For example, I think FedEx seemed like it's not particularly impactful to them even at the maximum rate. So it runs the gamut from, sure, that's another fee, not a big problem, we can see that it's needed.
Yeah, maybe to
see Mr. James wanting to add.
None of the developers, residential or commercial, said, yeah, we like the fee, we think it's a good idea, charge it. Some people had more of a problem with it than others. Some kind of looked at it as, yeah, it's a cost of doing business. You pay fees, you pay stuff. It's part of where you get everywhere. So to cut to a chase, nobody said we like it.
And I imagine the major corporations like FedEx don't care. They've got pretty deep pockets. I think it's the local developers that are probably going to have the biggest trouble with this. And when you presented it to the EDC board, can you tell me a little bit about the feedback you received there?
The feedback from there is that they are extremely concerned about driving away development, and anything that negatively impacts development coming here is not a good thing, and they would rather not have any additional fees. And that, I believe, was probably a large part of the recommendation to set that non-residential rate at a much, much lower fee.
And then looking at studies of how these fees have impacted other communities that have implemented them. I know I've looked at a bunch of studies, and it seems that there's still some unclarity about the total long-term ramifications, but I think it's generally accepted that they increase the cost of development, obviously, but even of maybe the valuation of existing properties. And so I guess one of the concerns I have is this idea that it's kind of a new development paying for new development, when ultimately, when the average price of a home, we said, what was $289,000, you start adding more fees to it, that starts to trickle up. The interest in alternatives, such as existing family homes, those price valuations tend to trickle up. I know certainly that's good if you're selling your home. But if you're planning on staying there for a while, it seems like there could be a taxation impact that hits you as well. And I guess one of the concerns I have is this idea that our choice is either the tax person A or tax person B, and to make sure that we do 120% of what we want to do. I think that's kind of a false choice. I think there's a little bit more flexibility in our planning than that. I just, you look at these fees, this would be a significant jump in fees in a very short period of time. And then I look at the capacity for growth for fees. So when we kind of have to go through a bunch of rigmarole to install this, but if we were to, if the next council were to choose to increase these fees, would it simply be, it would just be a simple ordinance, right? It'd just be, yeah.
So they could be increased up to the maximum amount by a simple ordinance versus being increased exceeding those maximums. You would have to go back and update the land use assumptions and the capital improvement.
Well, if we exceed the maximums, we're in a world of trouble. So is there, if the fees are raised within the maximum allowed at one point, is there a waiting period before they can be raised again, or could they just be raised at will as long as they're within the maximum?
Anytime, as long as they're within the maximum. And then at 5 years, the land use assumptions and capital improvement plan must be reevaluated.
Okay. And then that would potentially impact the maximum allowed fee. Correct. Based on that. So it's required after 5 years that those are redone.
Correct.
And then we go through this process. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, man, it's an incredible amount of money. And I'm thinking as a small business owner who owns some very small shaved ice huts and thinking of how ways I'd hope to expand, and I'm looking and thinking, you just added $6, $7, $8, $9, $10, $15, $20,000 before I even turned dirt. I can tell you the FedEx isn't going to care. They're not going to care. UPS isn't going to care. Walmart's not going to care. But if we're looking for local flavor and local development, we're basically telling them, putting out the "not welcome here" sign. Let's get the Fortune 500s, and that's all we got. So, all right, thank you.
Mr. Edwards?
So to Mr. Scagliola's question, he basically said, why are you waiting 18 months? But isn't it up to us? We can decide. That was a recommendation, but we can decide to go, instead of 18 months, 12 months on both, incrementally, right?
Correct. You could choose 12 months on one that's already platted. You could choose no delay whatsoever on properties that are not platted.
Okay. I noticed that we have a couple of planning and zoning commissioners in the audience as well. I'd like to hear their thoughts on the impact fees, if that's okay.
After council's finished, perhaps. Okay. Mr. Davis?
Could you go back to the, I hate to say the word beginning, but where they had the recommendations, the 4 or 5 points where you had this one here. They're recommending different rates versus residential, non-residential. I get that one, and I get incremental increases. I like the phase-in period myself and the grace periods. But each of these is based on 4 different service areas in the city. And the money that is generated from the impact fees can only be spent for capital improvements in those particular service areas. So what's generated in service area 1 can only be spent on service area 1.
Correct.
And if you go back now to the one where you had the rates by service area.
The maximum rates, or?
Yeah, go to that one. That's fine.
Let's see.
Looking at this, it would lead me to believe that there's much more capital improvements needed in service area 4, potentially, versus service area 3. Correct? I mean, because it's based on the capital improvements plan and the roadway.
It's based on that plan, but also the projected growth within that area versus current traffic in that area.
But I guess my question, it boils down to, we came up with a flat rate to use against all 4 service areas. Is that flat rate some kind of average across all 4 service areas? Or, I mean, just a number that was picked? Because I guess my concern is if we're turning around and charging the same rate in all 4 service areas, then we're generating money that may help us resolve a future problem easily in service area 3. But when you talk about an improvement in service area 4, it may put us back to the same thing, like, well, yeah, we've got a pot of money, but we're still going to have to go out with another bond and pass a tax increase or a bond fee back to the entire rest of the city because we charged a suppressed lower fee in that particular area.
That is exactly correct. Yeah, no, you're correct. And I think, not to argue one way or the other, I think what I have seen in my experience is where cities tend to push and charge the higher fee amounts, they tend to charge different amounts in each service area to allow them to do that. Where they basically say, and so for example, commercial, where you pull commercial down the way you've done it, to proportionally do one a little more than the other, it's a relatively nominal amount of money relative to how much you left on the table by pulling the fee down, and that's a bit of the logic of it. There isn't a right or wrong. You're correct. I will say, too, as Kathy said, the maximum amount in each service area is kind of a function of two things. One is you're looking at a snapshot of this 10-year window, and it could be that you're not planning to have a lot of growth over the 10-year window, and it's lower, and so when we come back, not even this next time to update, but the time after that, it'll go significantly higher. The other thing is, if Kathy has the service area map, it can go back. The service areas are all different because they're different sizes, and that skews it as well. So your point on the rest of the city paying for 4, sure, one of the problems on 4 is that it's the smallest service area, and it's got some very expensive, it's got a lot of roads relative to that are very expensive to it. So part of that is created when we draw the service areas, you get a bit of imbalance. But I think your point is well taken relative to what that does charging a flat rate.
I would imagine just the overall administration of a flat rate would be a lot easier for the city staff. I mean, I did look at New Braunfels roadway impact fee table, and I can imagine you need a slide rule and an abacus and an IBM supercomputer to help figure out all of your fees based on where you're at and what you're building. So, all right, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Crawford.
Mr. James, correct me if I'm on the wrong track here. One time we talked about this. Didn't you make a comment that the areas where the money is collected have a certain size, not the same as a service area? Was that the subject on roadway impact fees, that the money can only be spent in that particular area, but it's not a gigantic area like we're depicting here? Does that have any value in what we're talking about?
Not quite. So the monies we collect in each service area have to be spent in that service area. So some of them are fairly large. They're 6 inches in diameter or maximum distance.
6 miles.
6 miles, rather, I'm sorry, 9 inches. 6 miles maximum diameter point to point across. And so that's how you kind of keep that rational nexus, if you will, of related to it. Utility impact fees are not that way. We're able to charge utility impact fees, water and sewer, throughout the whole area because it's more of an integrated system.
Okay, thanks.
All right, anyone else? I don't want to put our planning and zoning members on the spot unless they have a desire to come forward, but if you guys would like to say anything, Chair will certainly recognize you at this point. And especially because I have no idea what your take on this is. It's like getting a Christmas present. You open it up and you're not real sure what's in the box. So
beware what you wish for, right?
I've opened the box, so what you got?
Well, first of all, good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to come up here and speak on this. Hadn't planned to make any comments tonight, but this goes back about 4 years now. We had several developments come in to the city. Developer used a provision in Texas law known as rough proportionality, which allowed them to not have to pay for required roadway improvements because it was going to be more than, the value of what he was going to put into the deal. In essence, the city left over the course of several projects several hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. Planning and zoning, then we asked that question, well, if we're leaving this money on the table, is there anything we can do about it? And staff came back to us and said, there's this thing called roadway impact fees. In planning and zoning, we were like, okay, well, tell us more about it. What do we have to do? And we began this journey to update our thoroughfare plan and our land use assumptions and do all the things that we needed to do. And now we're getting close to the end of this. And, we're seeing it as a fairness issue for the development community. Both you have the developers on one side that are using this rough proportionality and avoiding having to pay some obligations that other developers do. We see it also in the comparison between Bensill Farms and the Mesa Woods subdivision right there on Schertz Parkway. The Bensill Farms had to extend Live Oak Road about 850 feet at some unknown cost. They amortized that out over 84 lots. I'm sure that's not an insignificant increase in the cost of those lots. Versus Mesa Oaks with 34 homes has had to pay zero. And there's no way that anybody can make an argument that even 34 homes has zero impact on our roadway system. And we're looking at too, as a Capital Improvements Advisory Committee. We're looking at $229 million worth of roads that we need to build. We look at our pavement condition index study showing that we need some tens of millions of dollars worth of repairs on our existing roads. The money has to come from somewhere. The roadway impact fee, it's not a solution. We're charging or asking and looking at considering charging far less than what we're entitled to under the statutes of the local government code. And we're looking at it as a tool in the toolbox to try to help fund the growth of our city. If we were 30 or 40 years further down our development cycle and we're closer to build out, and we weren't needing such big numbers to fix and build our roads, probably the roadway impact fee would not be a topic of discussion. But the fact is that we're 40 some odd thousand, we're about halfway where we're going to be. We have a tremendous amount of need. And, this is just a tool in the toolbox, and we consciously looked at the numbers to minimize the impact on potential future commercial development, where we pulled it down. We agreed with economic development in that consideration. We've reached the point where we have more in tax revenue coming from commercial development than we do residential, and that's something as a committee that we want to sustain and we want to maintain. And over the years, too, also look at what council has done, is that we have not been afraid to raise fees and to raise our standards. The Unified Development Code, the big example that I can come up with is, a number of years ago, I guess about 2010, 2011, when we eliminated the R6 and R7 zoning. That single step is probably accounts for the majority in the price differential between the new home prices in Schertz and Cibolo. Requiring larger lots means there's fewer lots, and so the developer's going to charge more, and it's going to add to the increase in the homes. It hasn't slowed down our development. We've maintained over the last decade a steady 3 to 5% growth rate. It's very sustainable, it's manageable, and I would see as a citizen and as a person serving on a board and commission that if any fees or things that we imposed on the UDC on the development community had a negative impact to where it would stop our growth, I think I would oppose it. But in the reading and research that I've done on the roadway impact fees, Texas passed the enabling legislation in 1987. Since then, I think Texas was the first or second state to enable the imposition of roadway impact fees. Since then, it's been expanded. About 38 states are currently have roadway impact fees in their laws, and thousands of communities across this country have imposed roadway impact fees. I was unable to find any example of any community in any part of the country that has gone back and eliminated their imposition of roadway impact fees. I think some communities have dialed them back a little bit when they felt that it did have an impact. And there are some studies that shows that it does have an impact. But the biggest impact on the roadway impact fees on development is in the area of affordable housing. And that's a very separate and distinct subject that at some point we probably as a community need to have a discussion about, if we want to go that way or not. But it's not relative to the roadway impact fees that we're looking at tonight or talking about imposing on the development community going forward. I strongly support it. I I think we're going to be better for it, and that the benefits are going to be better for us than the potential negative ramifications. And that's probably about all I have to say on that. If you have any other questions, fire away.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, council. Mr. Larson.
I'm just going to make a closing statement for the record because I think hearing testimony in council, I think it's pretty clear which way this is going to go. Thomas Paine said, "Government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, and its worst state an intolerable one." Something to remember is government is a hungry beast. And it's like Little Shop of Horrors, right? Feed me, feed me. And every drop of blood you give it, it wants 2 more in return. And so we look at this opportunity here to feed the beast, to pay for all the development that we need to pay for. And the great thing is someone else is going to pay their fair share, right? I'll tell you right now, it won't be enough. It won't be enough. I think you can hear from my esteemed colleagues the hunger and the thirst to feed the beast. There's almost excitement at the idea. And I can tell you right now, it won't be enough. And I think it's a dangerous road to go on. I really do. I think every year we're going to have water rates that increase. We're going to have impact fees for all different other things that are going to increase. We're going to have appraisals that are going to go up. I think the Texas legislature is estimating that the appraisals are going to go up 14% over the next 2 years. So if you own a home, hold on to your wallet. Wait till they start adding $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for development. That appraisal might even go up a little bit more. Waste fees are going to go up. Every fee is going to go up. In fact, the fees are going to go up probably a lot faster than your paycheck does. So if you have any kids that want to live in Schertz and you want them to live next to you, make sure they're doctors or lawyers. Otherwise, you might need to have a good car with good gas mileage if we're still driving our own cars in 20 years because they're going to be living a little ways out. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Can you go back to one of the slides that has all the blue and gray and it's absolutely beautiful. Not necessarily because of what it looks like on the Schertz side over there, but the reason you don't like all the blues and the gray and the white is you didn't go to University of Memphis. If you had, this would be the most comforting slide of the evening, and it is. Go blue and gray. All right, that silliness out of the way. A complex issue without question. A complex issue if you find yourself to be a fiscal conservative, no doubt. A complex issue if you find yourself to be pro-development and there's no additional commentary that you put with pro-development to give it any definition. Agree. I'm going to take a slightly different tack on this, and I may be right on and I may be just right off. We'll see. But I guess my commentary is this. We've built a quality product here in Schertz over the last 60 years. We're in demand. I would argue we've built an exceptional product that is this city over the last 60 years. And I say 60 years because this is the city's 60th anniversary come this September. And we've paid for that exceptionalism. And who's paid for it? He has, and he has, and she has, and she has, and all of us who have followed. So I tend to look at this more as an approach that we might take, and to use the words that Mr. Dalla used, this is a tool in the toolbox. Am I thrilled about adding additional fees? Probably not. But if you want to live in an exceptional place or develop in an exceptional place, it's going to cost you more money. It costs me more money if I want to sit in first class than if I want to sit in business class. And that's just the way that works. And it's tough to some degree for me to say that as a conservative, but I want to say this. What we're talking about here is what our city is going to look like ultimately at build-out. Because we are now almost to the point where we don't get to have any more ETJ, and we can't annex that much more. And so we're beginning to cross that bridge from this rapid expansion to moving down this path that is build-out. And I ask myself this hard question when I think about this subject. What will we look like at build-out? Are we going to look like a Plano? As you've heard me say many a time, you can take one step in one direction and go toward looking like Plano and take another step in another direction and end up looking like a different city. I'm not going to repeat myself because I don't want to be perjorative. And at what cost and who's going to pay? And again, I understand it's a complex issue. I do agree that if we did the maximums, we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot as to the development to some degree. I think that the numbers that have been proposed may be even a bit small, but they, I think, come from well-intentioned, thought-out modeling. And to Mr. Dalla's point as well, when we got rid of R6 and R7 as zoning categories in the city of Schertz, we heard people say, you're going to stop residential development in this city. No one's going to want to build here because they're not going to be able to make money off developing in Schertz. And it just wasn't true. I think that there's some similar things that could be said about potentially taking this action. We will not stop development by taking an action like this. We probably will not even slow development, because even with getting rid of R6 and R7 and going through the recession that came in 2009, our growth rate was relatively constant. Very unusual. Why was it constant? I'll go back to my first statement. We've built a quality and exceptional product here. My suggestion, since I don't get to have a vote, and sometimes I lament that, but not too often. Sometimes I do miss sitting in seat 5, I must admit. I think that we have our public hearing. Let's hear directly in these chambers from the people that live in the city, from the development community, and anyone else that wants to come before us. And if we need to have a second public hearing at some point, we can do that too. And if we need to make a commitment to one another on this dais that we're going to do this for 2 years and we're going to come back and we're going to look at it again and see if we were right or wrong, we can do that as well. And we've done so in this city. We have gone back and undone work that we have done as a council in the past. We have the capacity and we have the power to do so, and we have shown that we have that the precedent has been set that this council will correct itself if it makes an error. That said, I'm going to stop proselytizing because it's probably not productive, and see if there's anything else that council would like to say on this one before I move on. All right. Looks like we're going to move on. Thank you, Ms. Woodley. I appreciate it. And we're going to move on now to our consent agenda items. My first question would be, are there any of these that we should pull and consider individually? I'm going to ask that we pull item number 6. Mr. Crawford, you had a question for me earlier. I think maybe I've got an elegant solution for you, and I want to try it out. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, item number 2.
Item number 2. I'm going to pull and consider individually. Okay. Anyone else? All right, so on consent then, we'll consider item number 1, the minutes. Consideration or action regarding the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 13, 2018, and the minutes of the Special Council on the Go Town Hall meeting of February 20, 2018. Item number 3, Ordinance 18S07, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending the official zoning map by zoning approximately 7 acres of land to single-family residential district R1. Item number 4, 18S08, Ordinance 18S08, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending in Part 3, Schertz Code of Ordinances, the Unified Development Code, or UDC, Article 9, Section 21.9.9, Tree Preservation and mitigation, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing a severability clause, and providing an effective date. Item number 5, 18R23, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing expenditures totaling no more than $131,500 for one fiscal year and $263,000 cumulatively over the 2-year contract term for landscape maintenance of medians, parkways, and public grounds. Is there a motion to approve the items on consent?
Mayor, I make a motion we approve the consent agenda as stated, minus item number 2 and item 6 that were pulled.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Crawford, a second from Mr. Edwards. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays. The motion carries. Next item then we'll take up is item number 2, ordinance 18M09, an ordinance by the City Council. An ordinance by the City of Schertz authorizing amended City Council rules of conduct and procedure, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, and providing an effective date. Mr. Edwards?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to state for the record, the closed session versus the executive session, the should versus shall, I just don't want to see us getting in trouble. So I will be objecting to that particular item inside this particular ordinance. That's all.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 18M09.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Larson, a second from Mr. Gutierrez. Any other comments or questions from City Council?
Sir?
Dr. Scagliola?
I was just wondering, Mr. Edwards, could you clarify the verbiage? Is that the only thing you're objecting to?
No, I'm more concerned. I'll be very candid with you guys. I am more concerned about the disparity of what I'm hearing from our sister city. And I know we're home rule. We have the same law firm. We have 2 different things being said. I am more concerned about that than anything else. So that's why I'm doing mine. And please just vote your conscience. You don't have to do anything with me.
I'm just curious because in contractual law and things, there is a difference between shall and should.
Correct.
Is this, is it a binding type objection that you're making?
No,
or verbiage.
Verbiage, and I'll tell you why. For years, we've had executive sessions, and I understand that change comes about. We've had executive session, and we shall not. But at the same token, I will say if people are amenable to change, that is okay. I think that the timing of how it was done, as well as the coming out and sharing information that was to me sensitive, I don't think that was wisdom. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. I appreciate the insights.
Any others? All right, if not, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Nay.
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 All right, I have 6 nays and 2 ayes, so 18M09 will not pass on final reading. So we will, the original language will stand. I understand the sentiment of the council. I'll tell you this, if I decide I want to talk about what's went on in closed session, I'll do so, and if this council wants to censure me, feel free, and it can only help my reelection efforts. All right, move on from there. Item number 6, boards, commissions, committee member appointments. On this one, I think I have a solution to what might have been potentially a challenge. What came to me was the game of golf, where if you hit a ball and you're not exactly sure if you're going to be able to find it or if it's out of bounds, you hit a provisional. So I'm going to make a motion here that...
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely. Mr. Crawford.
I'm not sure what your motion is going to be, but if we can get this passed, maybe contingent upon the conversation you and I had, that would make me feel good to make the meetings that are going to occur continue to occur.
Yeah, so what I was going to suggest is that, what I was going to do is I was considering making a motion ratifying the appointments of Councilmember Scagliola, actually Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Ms. Susan Beck, Mr. Bill Baldwin, Mr. John Bierswall, and Mr. Don Taylor to the 2018 Hal Baldwin Scholarship Committee, and making a provisional appointment of Mr. Burt Crawford, providing that there is no conflict with the bylaws nor with the other appointed members. And if there's no conflict, then it would simply be an appointment. Good? All right, so then my motion is that we ratify the appointments of Dr. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Ms. Susan Beck, and Mr. Bill Baldwin, Mr. Johnny Biersfall, and Mr. Don Taylor, and a provisional appointment of Mr. Burt Crawford, provided that there are no objections within the bylaws nor objection from the committee that's being appointed, that provisional appointment be a standard and regular appointment.
Second.
I have a second from a motion from the chair, a second from Mr. Larson. Any other comments or questions on that one? If not, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
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 I have 6 ayes and no nays. Motion carries. All right. All right, we move to item number 8, Resolution 18R22, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter into a consent, joinder, and subordination agreement with regard to a waterline easement with Carriare Holdings Incorporated and Central Texas Regional Water Supply Corporation, or CTRWSC. Mr. James?
Mayor, this is my item. Essentially what we've got is the entity you just named is trying to acquire a water easement along property, part of which is property that the landowner has indicated a willingness and turned over right-of-way dedication documents. They're really concerned that if there's an issue or a conflict with it, it kind of puts them back to square one. And so the point of this is to sort of get on the same page to work out how we'll work together with that. Again, we feel like we've added language in there to ensure that, to the degree we really can, that there won't be conflicts with their line and our road construction. We don't really anticipate that, but everybody just wanted to kind of cover their bases.
Very good. Any questions from council on this one?
So is this the development of Eckert Road?
The right-of-way dedication is for Eckert Road. The easement is for a regional water line for Saws. That's much larger than our right-of-way.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 18R22.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Dr. Scaglioli. Any comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 I have 6 ayes and no nays. The motion carries. Next item that we have on the agenda is item number 10, Resolution 18R21, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the acceptance of the 2017 Racial Profiling Report and other matters in connection therewith. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Mr. James. So the good news is my portion will take less than 3 minutes. This is the 2017 Racial Profiling Report. There'll be 3 parts to the legal requirement, which is the legal basis for the report, the explanation of the report, and trends or comparisons. In 2001, in the 77th legislation enacted a Racial Profiling Act that prohibits the use of profiling based on race or ethnicity. In addition, it requires that we document the race and ethnicity of anyone detained, issued a citation, and arrested. We're to document if the race was known prior to the stop, if a search was conducted, and if that search was consensual, and if there were any complaints or allegations of actions in violation of the law. Excuse me. And finally, that this information is presented to City Council and to the state regulatory agency by the end of February of each year. This is the actual report that is being submitted to the state. This is where the data for the rest of this presentation originated, and I believe you have a copy of this in your packet. So the total detained last year was 4,870. You see before you is the racial breakdown of 97% of those that were detained. So the question is, what does this mean to us? The most often comparison made is with the census demographics of the jurisdiction. So if you compare 96% of our demographics, it does appear to be proportionate to the numbers of those that are detained. The demographics come from the 2012 census estimates. That's the most current information that we have. We can also compare to previous years, and if you look at that, again, the numbers seem to be consistent across the board. The remainder of the report answers the questions that I mentioned earlier. The race ethnicity was known prior to the stop in only 3% of those. A search was conducted in only 6% of the stops, and it was consensual in 7% of those. There were no complaints or allegations of violations of the law during the year. So using the data from this report, the fact that there were no complaints, and the data from the citizen survey, we believe that it does support the conclusion that the department is ethical and impartial in the enforcement of the laws and ordinances. Be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Council, questions for Chief? Does not appear that there are any. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. One question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Edwards?
And Chief, this is going to be on the website as well, right?
Yes, sir. It will be.
Thank you.
Second.
I didn't hear a motion to approve.
Over here.
Oh, Mr. Davis moved to approve. Mr. Gutierrez seconded. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, I've got 7 ayes and no nays. The motion carries. I'm going to take a little privilege from the chair. And council, I want to make sure you understand what you voted on item number 2. We're not voting on the ethics codes on number 2. We're voting on the rules of procedure, rules of conduct and procedure. So what you voted against was Article 2, general rules with regard to absences from meetings of the City Council that are due to occupational or business demands, personal or family illness, or absence from the city shall be approved by council as excused. That was voted down. And item 3.5, which previously read executive sessions. Executive sessions may only be held in accordance with state law. Now was proposed to read closed sessions may only be held in accordance with state law. So whether or not we keep things confidential about the closed sessions was not at issue. So I just want to make sure you understand that what you voted down was not what was discussed. All right, we're going to move on at this point. All right, so I think we've done number 8, number 9, number 10 we took care of as well. Item number 11, Ordinance 18T11, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing an adjustment to transfer funds for the operations grant in connection with the A Smart Restaurant Supply Company performance agreement, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance and providing an effective date. Walters, good evening.
Good evening. I'll be stepping in for Mr. Kenneth this evening on this item. This is a previously approved performance agreement with A Smart. Council had this item, the performance agreement, brought to them on August 29, 2017, and it was approved via Resolution 17R74. Due to the timing of the submission of the agreement, it was not included in the 17-18 budget. We weren't sure when they were going to be able to comply and be ready to receive payment, so we decided to hold off before allocating funds before we were sure that they were going to meet the requirements listed in the performance agreement. Now it looks like they are going to meet those requirements, and so this is a budget adjustment to allocate funds to carry forward with the allocation or the grant according to the performance agreement. So if there's any questions over the performance agreement or the terms, I can answer those, or if there's any questions over the
All right, council questions? Mr. Crawford?
Mr. Walters, we're voting to move the money to be able to pay them in the near future. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you have every expectation they'll meet that in the near future?
They are.
Or they may have already?
Yeah, they are days away.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to approve 18T11?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve ordinance number 18T11 as stated.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Crawford, a second from Mr. Gutierrez. Anyone else? Comments, questions from council? Not, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 7 ayes, no nays, the motion carries. So as a matter of procedure, council, if anyone would like to go back, anyone that was in the majority would like to make a motion to go back and reconsider item number 2, I would certainly entertain that motion before the close of the meeting. Item number 12, Resolution 18R25, City Policies, a resolution by the City Council of City of Schertz, Texas, approving an employee policy related to employee conduct and discipline in the workplace and other matters in connection therewith. Mr. Waite.
I just wanted to come up and prepare this for Ms. Kurz. This will be presented by Jessica, our HR director.
Very good.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. As you'll recall, I was here a couple weeks ago with several HR policies, one of which was the prohibition on harassment. The initial policy that came before you a couple weeks ago was designed to mirror our existing policy, which was limited or is limited in scope to only those classes that are currently protected by federal or state law. So based on some of the comments that were made, staff went back, we had some discussions and made some revisions. So what you have before you tonight is revised policy to include both sexual orientation and gender identity into the harassment policy. We wanted to come back this evening for your consideration prior to rolling out the revised policy to employees, as well as the new training of the employees. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Council. Dr. Kaiser?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for adding those in. I know it goes above the minimum, but I think it's very important.
Yes, ma'am. We agree. Thank you.
Council, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 18R25.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Dr. Kaiser. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 7 ayes, no nays. The motion carries. Next item we have on the agenda, we have a roll call vote confirmation.
The consent agenda consisted of items 1, 3, 4, and 5. A motion was made by Councilmember Crawford, seconded by Councilmember Edwards. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Council Members Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 2, ordinance number 18M09. I believe this was for final reading. Motion was made by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Gutierrez. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Council Members Davis, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted no. Council Members Gutierrez, Larson voted yes. Motion failed. Item number 6, Boards, Commissions, Committee appointments. The appointment of Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Ms. Susan Beck, Mr. Bill Baldwin, Mr. Johnny Beerswall, Mr. Don Taylor, and the provisional appointment of Councilmember Crawford, provided there's no objections of the bylaws. Motion was made by the chair, Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Larson. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Councilmembers Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser voted yes. Councilmember Crawford abstained. Motion passed. Item number 7, ordinance number 18S10, first reading. Motion was made by Councilmember Edwards, seconded by Dr. Kaiser. Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, Councilmembers Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed. Number 8, resolution number 18R22. Motion was made by Councilmember Edwards, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Councilmembers Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 9, resolution number 18R19. Motion was made by Councilmember Edwards, seconded by Councilmember Crawford. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Councilmembers Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed. Number 10, resolution number 18R21. Motion was made by Councilmember Davis, seconded by Councilmember Gutierrez. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Council Members Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 11, ordinance number 18T11 on first reading. Motion was made by Councilmember Crawford, seconded by Councilmember Gutierrez. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Council Members Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 12, resolution number 18R25. Motion was made by Councilmember Edwards, seconded by Councilmember Dr. Kaiser. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Council Members Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed.
Very good. Council, any corrections? All right, we're going to move on to the next item that we have. We have a closed session that was scheduled this evening. We're going to postpone that to a future meeting. If you're curious as to why, see me after the meeting, I'll explain. Next item that we have a workshop, and it's a discussion regarding a request from the City of Seguin to resell water to third-party wholesalers, which I think, Mr. Waite, would be a bit of a departure from what we've done as the Schertz Seguin Local Government Corporation for the last, 15, 18 years.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So, ideally, back in late January, I should say, January 31st, I believe, Mayor Carpenter received a letter from Mayor Kyle in Seguin with a request for the City of Seguin to be able to sell water at a wholesale rate to New Braunfels utilities, and that would be SSLGC water that would be sold through Seguin and not through the corporation. When you go back to the founding documents in 1999 of the corporation itself, it actually allows for this if both member cities and SSLGC's board of directors all agree that that would be an appropriate thing to do. There's one case where an organization can sell wholesale water without the board's permission, and that is the City of Seguin could sell to Springs Hill, which is a special utility district that surrounds Seguin, because they were selling to them prior to SSLGC. And when SSLGC was formed, the City of Seguin opted to stop selling them water and to have them purchase their water through SSLGC because it was better for the collective whole to have another water customer just besides the two cities. So it was a caveat in that original agreement because of their willingness to do that, that if any time they wanted to go back selling directly to Springs Hill, they could without any approval. The issue that came up was, do we want the corporation, because of the way it was founded as a 50-50 partnership between the two organizations, do we want them to always be the one that we point to sell SSLGC water? And if there was a collective need to do it in another manner, then everybody would have to agree to do it that way. And part of that reason is the funding model, so we'll talk a little bit about that. One of the things that I want to do tonight is just share this information with everybody. We don't have all of the pieces we need to provide to council for you to make a decision tonight. We're still waiting on rate modeling of this happening if Seguin were to do it versus SSLGC do it. From Dan Jackson with Wheeldan, our economic consultant that does our rate studies, does Seguin's rate studies, and does the rate studies for SSLGC. We're slated to review those with him this coming Friday. Probably March 13th, that first meeting in March, we'll be back with those with a recommendation to either approve or not approve that letter. So the pricing model for SSLGC works sort of like this. All SSLGC water customers pay the same O&M rate. So if you buy out of our 12,000 acre feet in Gonzales County, SSLGC's 12,000 acre feet, I should say, everybody pays the same O&M rate. In other words, what does it cost us to produce the water? Get it out of the ground, in the pipe, treat it, and in the pipe. Everybody pays that same cost per 1,000 gallons of water. The debt payments are handled a little bit differently. Any other customer that comes on is assigned a portion of the debt, and there's a formula that Dan Jackson uses, and it's probably the reason that we pay him a lot of money to work those things out because it's pretty complicated. But it depends upon how much they're taking and when and all these other pieces. But all those debt payments, we know each year we have X amount of debt that SSLGC has to repay. So out of that debt payment, everybody who's going to buy water from us, except Schertz and Seguin, that amount of debt payment assigned to them comes off the top. And then the remaining debt payment is currently broken between the two cities 50-50. So if there was $2 million that was going to be due in debt payments, and $500,000 of that was allotted to our other customers, then SSLG, Schertz and Seguin would split the 1.5 million, or we'd pay 750,000 each. And then that's added into our O&M cost for the water to get what we call our effective rate. In other words, what does the water actually cost us per 1,000 gallons, and then we break that down based on meter size and all that. But what is that water we're buying from SSLGC? What is the effective rate of that? So it has the O&M that's the same for everybody, and then it has our share of the debt payment. Well, one of the things that happens in that effective rate, because we're a larger community and we sell water to more people than Seguin does, is our effective rate is lower than Seguin's, and Seguin's effective rate is higher. It makes sense. You're taking that debt payment, dividing it by a bigger number or a smaller number. Seguin divides it by a smaller number, so that the add-on to their O&M cost is larger per gallon of water than what it is for us. And you can kind of see our consumption historically since SSLGC started producing water. From 2003 on up, we're the blue line, Seguin is the orange line. And you can see for a little bit that first few years, we really kind of tacked on with each other. I believe in 2009, 2010, there was a discovery that they were putting SSLGC water in what they thought was the river water line and to sell it to their industry. And so now you see after 2009 how that sharply dropped off. They shut that valve and continued to send the river water to those industrial customers. But you can kind of see they're about the same now that the drought ended in 2015. You see a little drop off there. Mirrors our drop off with an increase in 2017. But you can see because of the size community we are, how much more water we sell than them. And so Seguin has a little bit of an issue in that their effective rate, what each gallon of SSLGC water costs their consumer, is higher than what it is for us. And they have a number of issues they're going through in their community, and that's their issues, and I don't really want to dive into too much of that. But one of the reasons they've opted to do this is that when you look at the volume of water, we are real close. We're about 87%, maybe 88% of using our full allotment of water. By the way, the water's done the same as the debt. So if somebody, we sell 1,000 acre feet to Selma, 200 acre feet to UC. I don't know off the top of my head what we sell to Springs Hill, but all that water comes off the top. And then the remaining water that's left to produce out of the 12,000 acre feet a year is split between the two cities. So we're at about 88-89% of our total consumption out of the Gonzales well field. And Seguin is about 40-43%. So about half of what we're doing. And so, anyway, so the important part of that is that we've never really talked about anything other than a 50-50 partnership. And the way that it worked out was just the way that it worked out. And in the early years of the corporation down here, where we were selling close to the same amount of water, it was really a fair deal for both cities. But as our growth caught up to Seguin's and we surpassed Seguin in size, it became a bigger issue for Seguin in their effective rates. And so one of the reasons that they approached the corporation and they are approaching us is that they said, you know, there's two allotments of water. They're the same amount. Schertz is using almost all of theirs. We're never going to use almost all of ours. And so there's an allotment there that we would like to sell to NBU, New Braunfels Utilities. By doing that, in theory, we all prosper because the O&M rate will come down. It takes the same number of people and chemicals and all that to be ready to produce that 12,000 acre feet of water. So if we sell 2,000 more acre feet of that O&M rate for everybody should drop. The effect it has on Seguin that would be slightly different than what it would have on us is that Seguin's debt payment would then be mitigated not only to their citizens but also the 2,000 acre feet that is sold to NBU. So that would effectively bring their effective rate down closer to where our effective rate would be. Not the same, it's not going to quite take up it's not going to get to 87% of their allotment, but it's going to help them out in that manner. Our effective rate will come down due to the lowering of the O&M, but our debt payment won't change because we're not selling any water as a wholesaler through us. So we'll still be responsible for 100% of our debt. So up until recently, we've always viewed this partnership between the two as a 50-50. And in the past couple of years, we've started to kind of test that. Is it really a 50-50 partnership? We divide everything down the middle. You take care of your half, we'll do our half, and Godspeed to you. Hopefully everything works out. Or is it a partnership where when we have a need, does Seguin make a risk? Or when Seguin has a need, do we give a little bit to them to allow them to meet their need? We struggled with this on the Guadalupe well field in the agreement that we signed with them, because the city of Seguin really has no use for the Guadalupe well field unless they have some unexpected huge industrial development happen. Because of the way they're situated with Springs Hill, they're just not going to have a need for that. But we had a need for that well field because we're going to be out of water out of the Gonzales well field in 4 to 5 years. And so we needed that field. And so Seguin acted on our behalf, even though they didn't have a need to. Now, we crafted an agreement that put the balance of that weight on us, but they still consented to it as partners to keep it under the 50-50 partnership. And they still have a responsibility. If we can't make that debt payment, Seguin still has a responsibility to make 50% of that debt payment if that would happen. And so now they're coming to us saying, is there a way you could help us out to get our effective rate down while we're doing some infrastructure stuff that would help us lessen the load on our citizens? And so, as I said, the O&M cost is going to benefit us. They're going to share their share of the 50% debt payment. Make sure I've touched on all these. The other pieces that we want to make sure is, does the wholesale arrangement harm the other partner in any way? So there's two pieces of that for us as a city that we're working on getting answers to. One is the rate structure. The O&M cost comes down, but is there any other factor in SSLGC producing another and supplying another 2,000 acre feet of water that would somehow harm us in the rate structure setting? It shouldn't, but we don't know that because we haven't seen the models yet that our consultant is going to do. The other one of that about harming us is that if Seguin says, you know what, we don't need this excess water, but we want to sell it on our behalf, is what happens if we get into a bind where we don't have enough water to meet our needs? Is there a remainder left over in Seguin's half? And believe it or not, the founding documents don't speak to this. How do we work with Seguin to get the remainder of their portion into our tanks to serve our citizens if our expected need of more than our share of the Gonzales water happens before we have the Guadalupe well field in place? And so, and then is there a mechanism in place to ensure neither partner is harmed? And then if this door is opened, if we agree to open this with the city of Seguin and our partnership, are there mechanisms in place to ensure that if us as the other partner get an opportunity to do something similar, that we get the same agreement from their city council that we would get, that you would give their city council in this case? So those are some of the things that we're working out with Seguin. It's not an easy issue, but we also didn't want to come on the 13th of March and say, hey, we need you to vote on this. We wanted to give you time to kind of think about it. When we get the rate structures in, we'll supply those to you ahead of time so you have a chance to see what it's going to do. Overall, we saw this when we sold water to SAWS. It's going to lower our rates for our citizens. It's going to provide a lower rate, which will decrease the rate at which our rates increase, if that makes sense. So we have long-term plans for rate increases. This would draw that back and would allow us to pass that savings on to our citizens, much like Seguin's going to be doing. But what we don't know is what is the impact on both cities, and then those other factors. If we need some more of Seguin's water, or if we find somebody that wants to buy water from us wholesale because we have it available and they're close to us and we can connect to them, which is the issue surrounding the NBU piece. Is there some mechanism there that says we get to do the same thing if we get that opportunity? So it's a little bit of a change in how they're asking us to make and how the overall organization is set up. Mr. Greenwald, who's been here since the beginning and knows more about this, probably has forgotten more about this than I know, is also here tonight. He's one of the representatives on the SSLGC board. He could speak to this. There is a lot of angst about opening this can. There really is. And so the board is not 100% set that this is something that they would like to open the can of. Seguin sees the benefit for them. We understand the benefit for Seguin, but want to make sure that we're protected as well if we allow them to start, if we vote in favor of them doing this. So,
all right, council, questions? Dr. Scagliola?
Yeah, just a couple here, Dudley. First off, do we wholesale water, as in the city of Schertz? I know we have contracts with SAWS, UC, Selma, Garden Ridge. Is that the SSLGC that sells the water, or is it the city of Schertz?
SSLGC that sells the water. For saws, it gets transported through saws equipment. So they installed their ground tank here, and then they installed another pipeline that takes it to their reception area on Nacogdoches Road. We wheel the water or transport the water to Selma and Universal City.
Okay, define we.
City of
SSLGC or
the city of Schertz wheels the water through our system to get it to Selma and to get it to Universal City. And there's a charge added to that rate for wheeling the water or transporting the water through the city of Schertz's system. So there's a few pennies added to the rate.
Right.
And so if this was a deal that SSLGC was going to do with New Braunfels Utilities, they have to actually, to get to New Braunfels, we would have to go through the city of Seguin system and a little bit of Springs Hill system. And so both of those would get a wheeling charge off of that water if SSLGC did it.
Okay,
Otherwise, there'd be the capital cost of putting a pipeline in place.
So this is untested ground here.
It's currently not been done by the corporation. That's correct.
Okay, and you said it has to be agreed upon by three entities. I take it Schertz, Seguin, and New Braunfels, or what?
No, Schertz, the city of Schertz, the city of Seguin, and the Schertz Seguin Local Government Corporation.
All
three
three
boards
entities
have to vote in favor of it.
And okay, what's SSLGC's position?
I can't speak for that board, sir.
Then I'd like to ask a representative from SSLGC if they've had that discussion outside of closed session.
Would you recognize?
Mr. Greenwald, if you'd like to speak, I'll certainly recognize you, sir. Your option.
As an old man, I don't mind talking. Buddy's right. I was part of the original crew that started SSLGC. I've been involved with it for over 15 years. Just to give you a hint. I spent 5 years as president of the board, got off for a year. The city was very nice in allowing me to come back on the board. And I enjoy it. I want to keep my hands involved in it. Board's position is, again, it's new ground, it's new territory. We don't know what the problem will be. One thing we see down the road for Schertz, until the Guadalupe project comes on, there's a possibility we're going to be tight on water, not have enough. Based on our growth, which there is plenty of growth coming, regardless of what everybody says. Excuse me. But we want to make sure there's enough water to supply Schertz and UC and Selma and hopefully Saws, although they're not going to buy as much as they originally intended. No biggie, but they are buying some water. Again, main concern is by 2023, 24, are we going to be completely out of water? Is the Guadalupe field going to be in process or able to support us? You know, there's just too many ifs involved in it. That's what the board sees. Again, we haven't heard rates or anything to do with what it's going to cost. Seguin gave away most of their city many years ago because they didn't want to extend water lines. Which city manager? I have no idea. I think I know, but they were, to me, they were foolish. They gave up a lot of city, a lot of the city. A lot of the big stuff that's on the outskirts, they don't supply it because it's not in their service area. So they don't have a great need as Schertz does. even though they've got growth. I mean, they've got a lot of growth coming just like us. But they don't have the CCN. That's what happens when you give up stuff.
I appreciate that answer. That's all I have, sir.
Mr. Edwards?
It sounds as though it may be premature for us to be selling or having someone else sell water outside of the corporation.
Well, Dudley made it pretty clear that, you know, nobody has said, yeah, it's final, go. We need some more information. The rate study will give us a lot of information, and the board's going to look at that as soon as it's available. But right now, it could go, but again, a couple of years from now, maybe we want to sell water.
So am I hearing that we just don't have enough information right now to make an informed decision?
I don't feel there's enough information, and Dudley's pointed it out pretty right.
Okay.
I think he just wanted to give you guys a heads up. So come the 13th, you didn't just walk in and see this on the agenda. Say, what in the world's going on here? It's kind of a CYA, just your information. Okay?
Thank you.
All
Anyone
right.
else?
No questions? Yes, sir.
And I apologize. I think you touched on this a little bit, Mr. Waite, but currently in the agreement, if we begin running low on water, did I misunderstand you? And you said that the contract doesn't currently stipulate mechanisms for us to arrange a deal with Seguin to take that water. So essentially, there would have to be an amendment to the agreement. Am I understanding that correctly?
Or a second agreement. When we move forward with the second pipeline on the Guadalupe wellfield, we entered into a second agreement that covers debt repayment, who controls what and when. That's slightly different than the founding document. So ideally, with them wanting to do this, we may end up having to enter into a third agreement that covers this particular topic. It could be an amendment to the original 1999, but because of the funding tied to that, more often than not, the legal counsel for SSLGC doesn't want to amend that original document. They prefer to enter into new ones. And so the founding document at the time, when the pipeline got over here and we blew the water in the air and had the fireworks and celebrated, there was not a big concern that we would run out of water anytime in the future. Matter of fact, it was sold as a 50-year supply. We grew. We found some customers. A whole bunch of things happened. So it's about a 25-year supply, not a 50-year supply. And so the founding document saying 6,000 acre feet for Seguin and 6,000 acre feet for Schertz, that's more than enough water. Where are we going to be when we exceed that? Yeah. So they never said, what if Schertz needs 6,500 acre feet? Can we have 500 of yours? It didn't speak to it because it wasn't something that was a fact. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure. And Seguin, and I don't mean to say they're not interested in this, when we looked at some consumption numbers from Walker Partners, the engineers for SSLGC, we shared those with Seguin. They were shocked to see that we have a potential of a gap where our demand exceeds the available supply out of our portion. And so they're also interested. So we've tasked Walker Partners. It's another set of information we're looking for. We've tasked them to look at Schertz and Seguin together with and without the 2,000 acre feet of water. We don't care who sells it. If we sell it, if anybody sells it to NBU and that 2,000 acre feet of water is committed, what happens in that gap where our demand could surpass our supply? Is there still room left on Seguin's side? It wasn't Seguin should do it, it's just is there room? And so we're waiting on those numbers to come back to confirm that there'll be room on top of the 2,000 acre feet. Because if not, I suspect Seguin won't have the comfort level of moving forward until we get that problem solved.
Okay, and I guess, I don't understand the politics of all of this, and maybe being in politics has jaded me a little bit, but would there be a concern that an unwillingness to work with them on this could turn into them being less willing to work with us when necessary, or is that not part of this relationship?
I don't see that as anything to do with this.
So two completely separate issues.
Everything we've done in 15 years was 50-50. and they backed us 100%.
All right.
So I don't have a problem with it. And again, they're looking at numbers that say, wait a minute, can we really afford to do this?
Gotcha.
Can we do it on a temporary basis? The problem with selling water is once you sign that contract, it's there, buddy. You're not going to get it back.
I gotcha.
It's gone.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Mr. Crawford.
Mr. Wade, will we have those numbers by the 13th of March?
Yeah, we're due to get we're meeting with Dan Jackson this Friday, I think via conference call. But anyway, we'll be meeting with him and reviewing his preliminary models. And that's the city's chance to go, oh, did you include this and did you include that? And then he goes back and works his magic, and then we'll have those by the first of the week after that if they're not final Friday. And then the demand numbers, we've got a set of those already from Walker Partners, but there was a mistake made in their calculations, and so they've asked us to throw those away and to come back. They're going to deliver us another set, hopefully by the end of this week. But we should have those in plenty of time prior to the 13th.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Waite. Hopefully we'll find an elegant solution that serves everyone, because we shall see. All right, next item on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Davis.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider ordinance 18M09.
I have a motion to consider item number 2, ordinance 18M, and I apologize, I don't remember which one it is right now.
Point of procedure?
I have a question as to the procedure.
Is somebody who is in the minority allowed to second such a motion?
Yes.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second to reconsider item number 2, ordinance 18M09. Any other comments, questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 7 ayes, no nays. The motion carries. We're going to consider ordinance 18M09, an ordinance by the City Council, an ordinance by the City of Schertz authorizing an amendment to the City Council Rules of Conduct and Procedure, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance and providing an effective date.
Mr.
Davis?
When we had the original vote, did we get our wires crossed on this one? When the discussion was held regarding shall and should, I know we had that discussion back, I believe it was in January, with regards to closed sessions, but when we were talking about the rules of procedure later on, let's see if I can find the file here, we had 3 items that were proposed by yourself, and council recommended 2, and those are the 2 that are reflected in the change that we're seeing tonight, if I'm not mistaken. One was just nothing more than to change the wording of executive session to closed session to get the proper title in there, and the other one was dealing with, as you mentioned, the attendance at the city council.
That is correct.
And I did go back and look at the changes compared to the previous one, and those are the only 2 changes that I see.
Yeah, we were not actually taking up the ethics codes.
The only thing I was concerned with, Mr. Mayor, was the 3.5. That's the only thing I was concerned with. From executive to closed.
Yeah, and again, the reason that I made the suggestion for the change is that in the Texas Open Meetings Act, there's no reference to executive sessions, only closed sections in the law.
Okay.
Anyone else?
If that's the case, sir, I'd make a motion that we approve 18M09.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Davis, a second from Dr. Scagliola. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 7 ayes and no nays. The motion carries. Next item that we have on the agenda then, following a reconsideration, is a roll call vote confirmation on the item we just considered.
Yes, sir. There was a motion to reconsider item number 2. Motion was made by Councilmember Davis, seconded by Councilmember Larson. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola. Councilmembers Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes. No one voted no. Item number 2, ordinance number 18M09 on final reading. The motion was made by Councilmember Davis, seconded by Dr. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola. Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola, Council Members Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Edwards, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes. Motion passed.
Thank you. As a matter of just clarification from the chair as to our rules of conduct and procedure, it is definitely correct for us, if we wish to reconsider, to have a motion to reconsider within the same meeting and to deal with that within the meeting. Once the meeting has actually been adjourned and closed, actually bringing it back at that time, if in fact it was a final vote, particularly with an ordinance on second reading, then item or bullet number 8 of the rules of conduct would apply, which reads that understand that majority rules, once a vote is taken, if you are in the minority, agree to disagree and move on. Recognize that a majority view, when expressed in a vote, becomes an expression of city policy. So it is a very important, if there is something that we want to reconsider, that it's always done, if it's final reading, inside the confines of that meeting. Otherwise, we don't get to really take it up again without violating our own rules of conduct. All right, so that said, I think we've covered everything on the agenda. We did not have the need for the closed session this evening. We'll reschedule that for a subsequent council meeting. My understanding is that we really had updates to go through on that. Next item that we have on the agenda then are requests and announcements, and we'll start with announcements from the acting city manager.
Just wanted to point out we've tried to adjust the agenda order a bit this time. You notice normally we don't split work sessions. One of the things we've kind of taken note of with City Council is the desire of council to have folks who are here for a particular item not to have to sit through an overly long time of things they're not interested in. So since we didn't anticipate a whole lot of interest in this last item, other than maybe by the folks who are going to stay for the entire meeting either way, we split it up. So we'll try that to do a few things there to see what you think. So certainly give us feedback. We'll hit some things probably as a positive. We'll miss some things other times. But that's the goal, is to try to respond to what we perceived on the part of council.
All right, very good. Thank you, sir. Next item is item 15, request by mayor and council members that items be placed on a future city council agenda. Dr. Scagliola.
I think we need to address it. Need an agenda item to have a discussion about hiring a new city manager. Specifically, I think staff needs guidance on what we're looking for and how to go about getting it.
Okay. Any objections? Looks like we have unanimous consent. Well, I will make a comment, Dr. Scagliola. I think that we do need to have on our next agenda a closed session to discuss the appointment of a new city manager. I think this council needs to come together on what we're looking for before we give any direction to anybody. I'm not sure that we're all on the same page, and that's where I would recommend that we begin. All right. Anyone else? Mr. Crawford.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask a question first. Since we had a sort of misunderstanding on item number 2 about shall and should and the other stuff, is that all sorted out now? Does that need to be addressed, or is that a closed issue? Or
yeah, we've had a first and second reading on the changes to the ethics
closed,
code.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We did dispose of that with 2 readings.
The other thing I'd like to ask, I'd like to suggest we have on the agenda an item to discuss things that we can do as a council and as a city to be more transparent and pass information more clearly and explain things sooner rather than later, maybe. Not as a negative concept, but as just making a more productive effort to be real transparent, like I teased Mr. James about. I'd like to see him eat lunch and know what he had for lunch, that kind of transparency. If you think it's a waste of time, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying I'm not sure what we talk about. I'm not sure if I can lead anything in that regard.
Mayor, I don't understand what he's asking.
Hold on, no problem. So, how about this? How about if we just have a workshop where we discuss transparency generally?
On our next one coming up?
Whatever meeting is at the pleasure of the council.
You don't mean one of our quarterly kind of workshops then?
No, I'm
Okay.
saying a regular
Workshop like we had
meeting,
tonight.
workshop like we had this evening,
Okay.
several.
Okay. That's fine.
Anyone object to that as just a general workshop? It looks like I have unanimous consent, so we'll put it on the next meeting as well. It's a general conversation with regard to governmental transparency. I think that'll be colorful and enlightening.
a point of procedure.
Yes, sir.
Can you help me understand why the discussion of what we're looking for in a city manager would be in closed session?
Because we'd be discussing and I forget all the language, the appointment, assignment, et cetera, all of those things that has been what we've done in the past. It does not have to be in closed session.
I mean, I'm not opposed to closed session. I just don't, we're not going to be talking about any specific, we're going to be talking about what we're looking for in a city manager. Are we going to be talking about specific issues related to specific individuals? I guess I don't understand.
No, we wouldn't. We would be discussing in general, and Mr. Santee, you interrupt me if we're getting into an Open Meetings Act issue by discussing this, but we would simply begin the process of having a discussion of appointing a new city manager, and that would include, in my mind, what are we looking for? What does this body want to give as direction to staff to go and advertise for? I mean, I think that in the past that has been a first step that we need to take.
No, I think the conversation is necessary, but Mr. Santee, can you help me understand the legal precedent for holding that in closed session, based on the subject matter?
That's been common practice as far as the duties, job descriptions, and as the mayor stated, everything that's listed in the under personnel section. What you can't do is you can't take a general discussion in closed session on a class of employees. You can discuss individuals, or you can discuss, in this case, what you're looking for in that individual.
Okay, thank you.
I would say this, if we are in closed session and we decide that we want to leave closed session and we want to have a posting to have the conversation open session, we can do that. I wouldn't advise it, based on my experience. Okay, Mr. Crawford.
Mr. Mayor, on the same subject, what you just said, if we do a closed session and we as a body want to come back out in open session, can we give a summary and tell the residents what our concerns were and things like that so they have or do we want to do that?
We would need to have that posted as an open agenda item.
Okay.
In addition to having a closed agenda item, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay,
but
thank
it's
you.
the will of council. Okay? Anyone else? Since the next item is announcements by the mayor and council members, I'll just say if anybody has any questions about that, about what we've done in the past with regard to hiring people that report directly to the council, just give me a call and I'll tell you about what we've done, and you can perhaps make a more informed decision about how you want to move forward. All right, item number 16 is announcements by the mayor and council members, and we'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Scagliola.
Nothing for you, sir.
All right, Mr. Davis?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Just one comment. This past weekend, I ran the Project Warrior 5K, and while I was running, I passed a vet on one of those rolling wheelchairs, and he gave me the thumbs up. Half a mile later, he passed me on the downhill, and I gave him the thumbs up. You look at these vets, and these, they're injured and they're wounded, but their spirit is still intact. And God bless those people that put the event together. The people that volunteered, the sponsors, and those that participated in it. Thank you. It really meant a lot to them.
Very good. Mr. Larson? Nothing. Dr. Kaiser?
Nothing.
Nothing, sir.
I was at that event as well over the weekend. It's a partnership effort amongst the city of Schertz, the city of Selma, and Operation Comfort, and it's been going on now. It was our 8th year, and it was intentionally done prior to my tenure as mayor, but worked out between the city of Selma and the city of Schertz that we do the race where Schertz and Selma meet. They're on Schertz Parkway. We're at dead ends at Lookout Road, right there where the Bluebonnet Palace is, where you can stand with one foot in the city of Selma and one foot in the city of Schertz. It's a neat place, and it's a great race, and it's grown every year. So wonderful event. It was great to be there. That's all I have. If there's nothing else from council or from staff, then we stand adjourned.